Hey, Bill, do you know where Stephanie is?
Right. Welcome everybody to this month's meeting. Our board meeting at February the 27th, 2024. The time is 11:01. We can call this meeting to order. Can we do a roll call, please?
Good morning, Chairman and Board of Directors. Director Emerson.
Here.
Director Odell. Not present. Director Stone.
I'm here.
Thank you. Correction, Chairman. Director Odell had joined us. Director Stone.
Present.
Thank you. Director Lockett. Not present. Director Adams.
Here.
Thank you. Director Robinson.
Present.
Thank you. Director Leggett. Director Leggett. Not present. Director Taylor.
Here.
And Chairman Cole.
Here.
So we have a form for today's meeting.
And next, I would like to get a motion in a second for the approval of today's agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
That we can do a roll call, please.
Director Emerson? Approval of today's agenda?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Director Odell? Director Odell? Not present for the vote. Director Stone?
Yes.
Director Lockett? Not present for the vote. Director Adams?
Yes.
Director Robinson?
Yes.
Director Leggett? Not present for the vote. Director Taylor?
Yes.
And Chairman Cole?
Yes.
Chairman, motion passed for the adoption of today's agenda.
Thank you. Next, we have three presentations. First, I would like to welcome from the ITC Design, Barnes Engineering and Design Consultant.
Good morning. I'm Cassie Beckwith. I am from Pond Architects and Engineering. We have had the pleasure of working with you all on a number of projects, but today I'm here to just show you all the ITC reconfiguration. So the drawings that you see here, the top drawing is the existing floor plan. So this is what you all have now. And you can kind of see the color, the difference in the color. The green is the area that we're working with, and then the blue kind of grayish area are areas that are basically going to stay the same. There's going to be a little bit of changes, but as far as the notice of the remodeling that's going on, it's going to be in the lobby and then where the Greyhound ticketing is. So as you see in the top floor plan that's existing, and then down here we are taking a little bit of space from the Greyhound space that they currently have, and we're going to turn this into a boardroom. So we're going to add the walls out in the lobby, have the corridor, still have the entrance the same. But you will have some space on the outside of that corridor, those walls and the boardroom walls to have seating for visitors, people who are waiting for buses. And then within the boardroom, you'll have the center for the large presentations of boardroom, board meetings, large meetings, and then also the flexibility to change around the furniture to be able to host and have people come in and sit in that room as well. So yes, we are dividing the space into the boardroom, but that space will still be able to be used on a day-to-day basis and be flexible for those that come into the building. And then after we had a committee meeting I was here to present the committee meeting last week, and after that committee meeting, I think Ms. Faye got some information from security that they wanted to be able to use some of the space where the old boardroom was. And so that is going to be, some space that could be flexible as well and used for safety and security in their offices.
So that new information will you do some redesign for that area, I'm not touching that area. Something we can do ourselves.
I'm not, this was all kind of new information, so we haven't worked through all of those details yet, but it sounds like there will be a little bit of reconfiguration, adding technical components that are for safety and security, so that's something that we'll move through in the next couple of weeks to get that worked through.
I think it'll,
No.
so we will be responsible for that, Dr. Robinson, and what we plan to do is working with safety after their outreach following the committee meeting, is we're going to look at the furniture in that room and how that furniture needs to be reconfigured and the additional technology with monitors and such that needs to be in that room. But the room can accommodate it in terms of the function that we want to put in there quite well. It's really going to be a matter of fairly low-cost furniture and technology outplacement rather than having to reconstruct anything. But we are going to commit that space to safety and security. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so what we're mainly focused on is the boardroom and creating a space that can be used for larger gatherings like today, but also that would still be flexible to use for the guests that come into the station.
I have a question.
Go ahead with your question.
I know. Where's everybody that's riding the bus supposed to sit? When they're waiting, when it's raining, when it's cold, where are they supposed to sit?
So on the outside, and I don't know if you'll be able to see, point to this, but in the corridor where we have a labeled corridor, there's 3 benches that are shown right when you walk in the entrance. They're going to be benches. So we're showing 6 benches total around the corridor. But what we discussed,
Plus the seating in the room.
yes, so what we discussed last week at the committee meeting was that the inside the boardroom, all of the furniture that is shown is flexible and movable so that you set it up for a boardroom, but then when you're not having a board meeting or large meetings, you then arrange it to where people can come in and sit during the day, during the hours where there's not a board meeting. So there'll still be plenty of space for people to sit when it's raining, when they're waiting for a bus, inside that space as well.
Director Odell, I actually believe, and we haven't counted this yet, but I'm going to go out a little bit on a limb here. I believe, looking at this, that we actually are going to have seating that at least equals what's there now for the waiting public, but I think it's actually going to be more seats. So because of the fact that the seating will expand towards the area that currently Greyhound is in, that now becomes our space. So it allows us more area for seating, and you can see it on the diagram.
And I also think it'd be helpful if you explain.
That just seems like a lot of space to use just for board meetings or gatherings. I mean, we have the multi-purpose room. Is there a reason we're going over there?
The boardroom has been at the ITC, and we were just converting that space to allow not only, it's really kind of a multi-purpose space. It's both to allow for the board meetings to be there, but it's also to allow it for when we have public meetings, which we have more of them today. We haven't really always had a room to comfortably accommodate some of our most recent public meetings, and it's also to allow for the seating space for the general public as they wait. So it's really kind of serving multiple purposes.
It's considerably larger than our old boardroom.
It is, and it provides more seating space for both public meetings, and it provides more space for the general public in addition to board meetings. So it's not exclusive to the board meeting purposes.
And I was thinking that it might be helpful if you can describe how that will work. You know, when we're not having a board meeting, you can open it up to the general public, the seating.
If you go by the house, take my makeup out of here.
So,
What does
I mean,
it look like?
it's very, I mean, you kind of look at, so these tables roll, the wall, whatever the seating is, whatever the furniture is decided upon, but it's just very flexible so that you can put a storage room, you have a storage room here, down in the bottom floor plan, so that's a new storage room, so that's where furniture that's not being used can be placed outside of the boardrooms or the board meetings or the larger gathering. So then you have, you can pick, and none of this furniture has.
Thank you. Good thing.
So these are all things that will be to be able to then go and pick these furniture that you are flexible, that you kind of move around. So most of the time, the furniture will stay as is for general seating, and then when you have a board meeting, you come and you switch, not you specifically, but people come and switch out the furniture to arrange it for a board meeting or a larger meeting.
One reason we think that's especially important is because we all know that right now we don't have any place for CAT to expand, but we've got staff growth, we've got activities growth. Like I said, we have a lot more public meetings now than I think certainly we had for a bit, and part of that I suppose was due to COVID, but nonetheless, we have a lot of more activities ongoing, and and the storage space as well. And this was intentionally designed to be a very flexible space, and to afford us the opportunity to accommodate the growth that is coming.
Joined the meeting.
I guess what might be a little confusing for everybody is the entrance way. So that's gonna be a multi-purpose room, and how would you enter that room? Would we enter differently for board meeting, or would we enter differently for seating? How's that gonna?
So the main entrance into this new room is here. So you come in the entrance and then you would go in here, but there is this back entrance here and then also the back entrance there. So the general public would come through the entrance and then they could go through these double doors to sit in this area during the day.
That seems like a lot of fancy, you know, and you're just gonna have 6 benches. That's gonna be closed off, so you're gonna have somebody open that door and monitor the people in there so that they're not up on the podium or on the, that just seems like a lot. Couldn't be, I don't know, office space or something? There's no better way to use it than to make it a grandiose boardroom.
Where would you prefer the boardroom to be?
Well, we have a boardroom. If we're not gonna use that boardroom, we can just stay where we are.
That boardroom is just so incredibly small. It's very difficult to accommodate if anybody comes and wants to meet or whatever. And we use that for public meetings too, and it always really is such a constraint. And now we're going to give that room to safety.
So is this room a problem? Because we use this room.
Well, I think that the thing is we always have to plan around board meetings, and this room gets used a lot for training purposes. And if we're giving up to give that to safety, if this has become more of our training space, we use it for that quite frequently, as well as staff meetings when we have both the managers and chiefs meet together and so forth. We use this room a lot during the week, and so it's just a matter of trying to preserve the maximum amount of flexibility in all these spaces to allow for a proper boardroom, to allow for good seating space for our passengers, to allow for the kinds of training and meeting space that we need, especially here at this building.
We only have the board meeting once a month.
And committee meetings. And,
So
but I'm
that's
saying
3 times a month?
Yes, ma'am.
How often do we have public forums where we need a room like this? You know, so that, and then right now, what spaces are we using?
We've used this space. We have used the small room. For example, I'll give you the most recent one is we had a meeting for the, we had a meeting for the bus stop inventory shelter work, and we had that down in the small, that's what was the former boardroom. That's a really difficult room because if you're trying to give a presentation, as we frequently are, that room is super constrained. But again, that's going to go to safety. It's super constrained for that purpose. So again, we're trying to make sure that we're maximizing the square footage that we have, and we're using it in flexible ways and accommodating all the needs that we have.
But I think the fact that we're giving that space to safety doesn't take away the training, does it?
Yes, ma'am. That'll be dedicated space now for safety, so we'll figure out how to do training more here or in some of this other open space even down there. We could use we could use some of that space there. Again, these are, you know, operational planning things that we'll need to get to outside of the physical layout, but I think that there's ways that we can use that space for that purpose as well.
How many people currently go through that center and use that seating?
I don't know if you all collected that data or not.
I do not have that in there.
So you're not sure if 6 benches is enough for the people that's coming through there?
Well, you may have,
That kind of be important.
Tabitha, you may have missed all the furniture in there is modular and mobile like this.
Not
Also.
Yeah, the benches are
Not the
not
six
the only.
benches, but all the stuff in the boardroom. But also, real quick, I do feel like there is a general sort of concern from the board that this may not be the overall path
Okay.
that we want to go down.
Okay.
And I hate saying this, but I kind of feel like sort of starting from the drawing board again may not be a bad idea to try to figure out like the best use for CAT that the board can really get behind, that the community can really get behind. I just feel like I mean, this is a incredible building in the middle, perhaps in the middle of downtown. And I do think that sort of making sure that we're really doing the best that we can with the space. Currently, I don't know if this, and I kind of feel that, I'm kind of getting that vibe from other board members. I don't think that this current setup is what we're trying to get for.
So let's talk about that for a minute. You might want to share about the limitations or have Victor share about the limitations on the funding.
So in full disclosure, this is not, I'm just presenting today. I don't know what information was given. I am, here as a representative for another architect who could not make it. So he may have all of that information. All I know is what we're here to serve you all and how this space is best gonna suit your customers, you all, the board, everybody. So if this doesn't work, that's our next step, is to move forward with.
Okay.
That's what we're here to present.
I was just trying to recall, wasn't there this one of the ones, Beverly, that had a limitation on how long the funding was available?
But I do think what is important is that whatever data was collected, and I think that's a staff question, when we first ventured out to do this, what data did we collect to share with them the scope so that we can ensure that we're providing adequate space? So,
Yes, ma'am.
do we have an answer to that question?
That would come from facilities and from procurement.
I also do believe that CAT does need more space, more flex space, to either have a board meeting or to have a public meeting about, a future route expansion or to invite people in. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think, and sort of the modular design there also makes sense. But one thing that I'm kind of just sort of like trying to figure out in my mind is sort of the placement within the larger space. And I also hear that there's a concern from us up here on the board about where people can stay when it's rainy, where security can go, where offices can go. So I just kind of feel like I don't want to spend a lot of money on something that we're not all really comfortable with. And I just kind of get the feeling that we're not all really comfortable with this plan.
Well, and again, I go back to the fact that I think the need for proper data collection is important before we venture out with anything. And I think because we're serving the public. And so I just think that I just wanted to know when we initially set out to do this, what data did we collect to say this is feasible or a possibility? Because you bring to us as something that we're ready to go with. See, and that's what my concern is.
We can go back and get that information. This project started about the grant and everything was from 3 years ago,
Yeah,
maybe
it's been a
4.
while ago.
I mean, this has been out there for a bit, and I think the other issue that we have now, Dr. Robinson, that we've been up against since I've been here is the potential for these funds to lapse. So a lot of this analysis was done that long ago, and then the grant itself was not moving forward to implementation. So in any event, we can go back though and get what you need and bring that back, all of you, to the board.
I'm gonna make a suggestion, that all the questions and concerns be given to Ms. Massimo, and then maybe at our next board meeting, we can come up with some modifications based on the request that you're hearing today.
Or through our committee structure.
Right, but I would like everybody, the committee is just, our small groups, and but if everybody in this room can submit any of their questions and concerns prior to the next board meeting, and if it's in time for the committee meeting, that's great. But if not, at least for the board meeting, we would have some of these concerns addressed and some of these questions answered, because I think that there's clearly some unrest here, and so let's see if we can't do that and then move on with our
Absolutely.
agenda today.
And we'll also show for some of those other places, like we're talking about security going, we'll also show that on there, even though that's outside of the scope of the project proper.
And then I think what could be helpful too is sometimes I think it would be really nice is if we could meet with the architect or lead designer on a project like this, and give him a Sharpie marker, a really very bold Sharpie marker that we can sort of like do some really sort of very big gross sketches on before we sort of like, because that's always a problem with sort of like architecture, is that like you get really detail oriented and start getting into the engineering and the HVAC, and it's like, ooh, maybe we need that 2 feet to the left, but that requires an enormous redesign.
Well, and I think what this plan that was created was based off of information that we were given, this is the size of a boardroom meeting, this is how many people we want to fit a boardroom. Yeah, there's a consensus that needs to be a planning meeting where the board gets together and we talk about options 1, 2, and 3, let's meld the 3, into one that works best for everybody's, the general public, and having them in a board meeting. I mean, I think the boardroom is, it is very large, so just if y'all want that smaller, we do smaller boardrooms and maybe a larger waiting area. Those are things, we need a planning session, it sounds like, to go through and get the ideas.
I mean, my other thought, and I'll just say this, I don't know if this is out of line or not, but I feel like this plan is sort of a middle-sized plan, and we should almost sort of consider maybe like doing, like thinking about the whole building as the whole building altogether. And so I'm very interested in sort of like, what are the constraints in terms of, are there sections of this building that we can't alter? I know obviously like the Greyhound site, that's probably sort of off limits, but moving to the west, can we alter some of these parts of the area?
We've got, those are filled right now, people working in that middle section. The office spaces that's available, the office spaces that are on this wall are the ones that are available for growth. The one thing that I do think should be on the table as well is the CEO's office down there. I don't really think that I need 2 offices. And I think that that's a nice space, and that may become where we would, if safety and security takes that one, maybe that's where it can become a training space. We've even talked about using it, for example, for like when we do, routine media work and comms work and so forth, setting it up as a space to do that. So I think that there's opportunities in that office as well.
I do think there's a really good opportunity for us as a board to come together with the kind of the architect and with staff and try to figure out, okay, what do we want to do with some very like with crayons, like not with whatever you guys use to design this stuff, but with like crayons and very loosey-goosey, sort of figure it out, make a bunch of mistakes on paper.
The only thing I want to reiterate is the need to, we got to understand the funding constraint on this, and make sure that we get the feedback back so that we can still make those marks and we don't end up with a lapsing grant situation.
Do that before next month's meeting.
Oh, absolutely. We can get that to you before the end of this week. That's what that date is.
I feel like we're actually pretty on the same board about like what we're trying to look for is sort of like, okay, keeping people out of the rain. I do think we need flex space. I think that size space is about the size space that we could use. Where it is in the building or how it's oriented, that's where I'm kind of thinking like we could make just some small changes and adjustments. So I do think we could move on that pretty quickly and get that back to you guys, and I'm happy to.
I don't want to jeopardize.
I don't want to do that either, yeah.
Well,
I want to get you the date so you've got the exact date on that and you're dealing with facts on that.
yeah, and that, I got one, I will ask Ms. Nassau one other question. We're still waiting on Greyhound to finalize everything, so, and I think there's still some renovation. I think you said they were gonna do some renovation themselves.
It doesn't impact ours.
Right, but we're still trying to figure out ultimately what's gonna happen with Greyhound.
No, ma'am, we're just waiting on them to send us a signed lease. We've ironed out all the details with them, and we're just waiting on them to sign the lease. And there's a document we have asked them to attach of what they are gonna do down there, just for our own as-built records. So we have an as-built for it, but,
That space is already.
but it's not gonna affect us regardless of what they do.
Right, so we've already designated their space. It's already been designated and.
Yes,
agreed
ma'am.
upon.
And it's showing on there. Yes, ma'am.
And the other thing, I'm not sure, I heard several different conversations a minute ago, but you can get us the date when this grant will expire.
I am.
Did I hear that?
Yes, and I think that's important, because like I said, this was one of the ones I heard about when I first got here, and it had been sitting for a bit, so we just need to make sure that we, whatever the constraints are around that, we know what they are and react to them. I apologize, I don't remember that off the top of my head today.
Sounds good.
Beverly, you recalled the same thing on that though too, correct? That there's some funding, a timeline constraint on this? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll be going into the fair policy study.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joshua Shank. I'm with InfraStrategies, and we are working with Cat to develop this fair policy study. Someone talk a little about it? Okay, thank you. Even better. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that study is about and how and where we are at this point as we look to launch and get your feedback on how we've structured this. So I'm just going to go through the introductions of the team and what the project is about. We'll talk about some of the goals that we've developed already, initial goals for the study itself, and then we'll go through next steps. So this is the project team. I think many of you have met Amanda before. She's worked on this. Oh, thank you, even better. She's worked on several projects with CAT, as has Sharon Green. And we're based around the country, but Amanda is here in Atlanta nearby. We all come from various transit backgrounds and have worked with transit agencies across the country on similar studies to this one. So our understanding of the project is that we're conducting a fair policy study to look at how we could have an agency-wide fair policy that is aligned with organizational goals. So what does that mean? That means that it is important for a transit agency to have a coherent fair policy that meets the goals of the larger goals of the organization, because everything you do with fares affects the outcomes for transit in the region. So you want to be clear about what you're trying to accomplish as an organization and what you're trying to accomplish with a fair policy, so that those things can be consistent and coherent and understandable to everyone. So why do this now? Why is it important for CAT to undertake this effort at this moment? Well, one is that just recently completed the transportation plan, and that means you have much clearer direction about where the organization wants to go, and that sets the stage for thinking about other aspects of the organization that can be aligned with that plan. Second, I lost the. Okay. Second, fares have not effectively changed since 2009, so that's a long time to go without reassessing and reconsidering fare policy, because obviously a lot of things in the world and in Savannah changed Chatham have changed since 2009, and it is worth re-examining whether the existing fare structure is still meeting the same goals that might have been established at that time. We also have this impending technology change in 2025, where the existing system will not be supported, so it's a good time to undertake that well before we get to that point. And finally, as I mentioned, fair policy can be a great way to accomplish some of the goals you might have for the organization because it inherently affects riders and the organization pretty substantially.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Are you going to get more into why the existing tech is going out?
I think we have someone else who can address that better than I can, yeah. But
If you want to talk about that later too,
Okay,
just like
yeah.
keep going.
not my area of expertise, but,
right.
so on fair policy process, this is how we're going about it. So the first task, and we do this with any project we undertake that's a policy task, is we have to figure out what are the goals of the fair policy analysis. Why are we doing this? What are the things that we really care about? That's where we are right now. So far, what we've done is that we conducted a staff workshop where we talked to staff about what they think the goals should be, and then more critically, prioritized those goals. So it's very easy to say like, oh, I'd like to have higher ridership, or I'd like to have greater equity, or all these different goals, but which ones are the most important? Because that's how we're going to figure out what the right policy is. Now that we've done that, the next step after this is to develop potential options. Now that's based in part on the prioritization and the goals that we've already conducted, right? Because that gives us a sense of which types of options we should look at. But it also we'll also be doing research on how other agencies, similar peer agencies, have structured their fair policies, different innovative methods and ideas that people have come up with around the country to accomplish some of the same goals that CAT might have in mind. That is going to all come up with an analysis of these options. We'll present these options and the analysis for consideration and make some final recommendations about what the fair policy should be.
Can I ask you a question about one of those tasks?
Yeah.
When you say research and analysis of options, what type of research? Research has been done, or research will be done, or what options will you be actually doing analysis on?
Yeah, so there's two different types of research that are associated with this, right? One is, what are other peer agencies doing, right? What have other places done, and what has been the impact or outcomes of those, so that we know, well, if we pull this fair policy lever, then this is the likely outcome. That's one component of it. Another is to look at what the literature says on how fair policy can impact goals, because those are more comprehensive, and I've looked at it over time, looked at the data over time and figured out, okay, if you do this, then you're going to likely get this result. So it's those types of research that will help us develop and analyze potential options.
So that's why I asked, because there should be some local research being done, like the poverty rate hasn't changed that much. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I was kind of looking for, but I didn't hear that. Yeah. So I'm hoping that there's something involved in there, and we're going to look at the community.
Yes, absolutely. We have to understand the trends and analysis of the local area in order to make those recommendations. I'm sorry, I should have said that explicitly, but absolutely that will be a part of the research.
Josh, one thing I would suggest supporting what Dr. Robinson just said too is I know that when you go into the primary, that sort of prioritization, I know that I remember equity is top of mind. One of the things that I would suggest should be a part of the research is there was recently a report, the ALICE report that was released, the United Way, 21 states in the country are participated in it, but it really is a report that talks about, it's not about where are the poverty levels, it's about, that's not sufficient to look at people in need in your communities, but it's what is the requirement for people to be able to thrive and have a successful life? What is sort of that threshold, not poverty levels. And so there was some really terrific work done for Chatham County as a part of that United Way effort that I think would be critical research to feed into this, and we can get that to you.
Excellent, excellent, thank you. So in establishing the goals and priorities, we worked with staff, and this is where we wound up. Like I said, we first said, okay, what are the goals? And we kind of brainstormed the potential goals of fair policy. And then we said, let's prioritize those. So we came up with primary goals, secondary goals, and tertiary goals. And it's challenging to prioritize these things, right? Because they all matter and people care about all of them. But if you don't prioritize it, it becomes much more challenging to develop a policy that accomplishes what you most care about. So we came up with working with staff, we came up with the two primary goals, as Faye mentioned, one of them being equity. And now equity means many things to many people. In this case, we talked about equity with respect to income levels, which is what Faye was just talking about, but also across modes and business lines. Does the new fair policy should try to align equity across those things so that it is a more equitable system overall for people? And then second, CAT as a trusted brand and service to the community, this was something that people identified as being a very critical outcome that they would want to achieve with the fair policy study. Now that doesn't mean that the other things aren't important, right? Obviously, ridership, long-term sustainability, ease of understanding, these are all important things, and we can try to incorporate these as well into the fair policy. But it's really important to start out with what the top priorities are in order to move forward with something that has a chance of accomplishing those. So that was the point of this exercise. So this is the project schedule as it stands now. So like I said, we conducted the first workshop with the executives in December, and now we are here, discussion with the board and public in February. So we're hoping to finalize the goals and priorities, and once we do that, we will start to develop the options, do the research and analysis of those options. Those are kind of concurrent tasks, and including the literature review and case study analysis, to get to the point where we have some draft and final recommendations. So the draft recommendations, of course, will be presented to staff and to you for consideration, and then we'd come up with a final recommendation for the report. So, like I said, next steps, we're going to do the literature review with respect to fair policy, as well as the critical research locally that we talked about. We'll develop that initial short list of policy options so we can have an initial discussion around some of the options. And then we'll produce the final recommendations and a draft and final report. So I hope that's helpful in terms of outlining where we're going with the study, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have the ACU Local 1324 Leadership Update. Our union president is Donna Swint.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning to the board. Good morning, management. I'll start off. The union made a draft on the grievances that we had in each department. We will be bringing this to you monthly, and the improvements, so you can see the grievances and the improvements in each department. Under this chief administrative officer, we have HR. As you see, we had 3 grievances, and all of them were rectified. In the training department, we had 4 grievances. None of them were rectified as of yet. In safety, we had 4 grievances. 3 were rectified, but one of them, safety, is working with the COO to get that rectified. So the union is working close with them on that. In IT department, we had no grievances, so it was 100%. So that made 11 grievances, 6 rectified. Under the COO, we have maintenance, paratransit, and fixed route. Maintenance, we only had 2 grievances. 1 was rectified, and I did discuss with the COO, so we're working on the other one. Paratransit, we had 6 grievances, 2 were rectified. Fixed route, we had 9 grievances, 5 were rectified. So a total of 17 in the operating department, 8 were rectified. For the CFO, we had 4, and all of them were rectified. And for the CPO, we had none in her department, and that was at 100%. For January, in Unity, kudos to Ms. Ariel, our communication officer. She promotes Unity and getting the ATU to be involved in various events leadership. CAT invited ATU to join them in the Martin Luther King Day Parade. This event was successful. It displayed unity with the company and the union gathering together to give recognition and to celebrate MLK Day. I also want to give you all an update on our union members. We did get 6 new members in the union for the month of January and February. So that makes a total now of 92 union members at Chatham Area Transit. Our future outlooks, on March 18th, the union and the company has set the date to bargain CAT Connect.
What day, I'm sorry?
March 18th. The union and the company will bargain CAT Connect and discuss paratransit wages for 2024. This is according to Article 1, Section 1 in your CBA book, and paratransit is Article 21 under wages, if you want to look it up. I do want to give a kudos to Dr. Manning for assisting, and Mr. Sanders for assisting. We had a homeless lady that was living at the bus stop on Wheaton Street by Family Dollar for a while. She had mental illness. The operators were complaining, and the passengers were. When I sent the email, they got on it the next day. I know that Ms. Faye has partnership also with the homeless and the mental illness program. So they did get the lady help and removed. They got the bus stop cleaned and able for the passengers to use it. So I thank you for the expeditious response and getting that done. I also want to kudos the CFO for responding expeditiously and meeting and rectifying all of the union's concerns for Ms. Cutter. And Dr. Manning for helping with most of the grievances in all of the departments aside his. So that takes a lot of work. The union has completed the board bid for paratransit February 19th. So paratransit board is scheduled to go into effect March 4th. And the union has completed the fixed route board on February 23rd, and that is scheduled to go into effect on March 11th. So the new board.
What is the board?
The board bids, that's the routes, they bid on the routes every 4 months. We conduct the bids, and then 2 weeks later, it goes into effect. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
When you bid on the routes, what's the winning bid? Like, how do you determine, what's the metric?
So what they do is they go in a seniority order, and they give them the route, all of the routes that Chatham Area Transit offers. And in seniority basis, they bid that way on which ones they want, and we just write their names down.
Under which block? And under the block that they want?
Yeah.
And then whoever has, and then it's given based on seniority?
Seniority.
Okay. And are the routes listed by time that they run to, or
Yes,
just?
they have the route, they have the time, they have the pulling time, when they pull in the garage, they have the release time, where they pick the route up at, and how they return.
Oh, okay.
So it has everything that they need on it.
So they know exactly what they're doing?
Yeah, they know exactly what they're picking.
I know there's probably not a lot of time to do this, but we've been on this board for various amounts of time. It would be kind of interesting to see, like, could we as a board simulate applying for different routes? You know, because I think,
See how it's done.
because
See how it's
I've
done? Okay.
I've asked you guys, like,
Yeah.
and you've told me how, but like,
Yeah.
I don't really get it. It would be very interesting
I will
to
bring
see
the information to
how
you.
that works.
Okay, that
Would
would-
I win? I beat Dr. Adams, I know that.
Well, it was going seniority, so
Well,
You're claiming stronger seniority?
Just one other quick question.
I'm gonna take Route
I
14.
think it was an issue in our committee meeting about the kind of customer service training that's being done, and I think staff is working with the customer training. Do you guys do anything union-wise as far as it relates to the customer training, like in addition?
We
in
don't.
conjunction with staff?
We don't. CAT has had customer training service, I mean, repeatedly for years. I've been here 9 years, and we repeatedly always had customer service training. The union does not, I do reiterate anything that is on a positive level to the members so that they are able to stay refreshed. I try to support when CAT has a customer service training for them to be involved. But we don't do our own customer service training because it's afforded to them.
Because I think it's important that if you do it, they need to show up for the training, so.
I think sometimes now we have now started working with the union to get timing because sometimes that's an issue, you know, the time that they have the training up. The majority of the operators are on buses. So then that means the administrative staff is there, but the operators aren't there. So I try to work with them with the timing that they can get more operators to be involved. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Swinton, as well as all our representatives today. Thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to our consent items. Need a motion and a second.
I got a question about one, I guess we could move it somewhere else, but I got a question about C, not about that particular thing, it's something that came up.
And I have a question about D that I need some clarity on.
Oh, yeah, it's D.
But we have to prove.
I just have a point of order and not to be obstreperous here, but we've already approved the agenda, right? I mean, I don't
I'm
mind.
not saying I don't wanna approve it, I'm saying I got a question.
No, I mean, my question is when we, in the beginning of the meeting, approve the agenda, that means we approve, am I correct?
Yes, everything is approved.
No, she asked a question about Robert Rules of Order.
Yes.
Is once you get to the consent agenda, at any point that somebody wants to pull something off.
Was that supposed to be done in the beginning to alter the agenda is my question.
No, we can approve, we can approve, what we did was up here in the very first part, that's always confusing to me as well, is we approved the adoption of the regular board meeting agenda.
Right.
Which means which appears to me means everything.
Right, so at that point, are we approving the items on the consent agenda because it's listed as consent? So that's just a question. Can anybody answer that? I'm just curious.
So, Ty, do you have a thought on that? I would think that after this is just my initial impression, is that after the agenda for today's meeting is approved by vote, it may take another vote to,
that's
right?
That's correct. That's correct. You approve the agenda, that would be the point at which someone would pull something to treat it as an individual item. But once the agenda is approved, when you come to that item, the consent agenda on your agenda, then you need to take a vote to approve the list of items that are on the consent agenda. A second vote.
Okay, so Ty, I don't want to take something off the consent agenda.
I understand.
Something came up during the consent agenda that's separate from approving this particular item. It just came up in the explanation of this item. So where do I ask that question?
I don't see any problem with your asking a question at this point.
Okay, so I think we really need to, as a board, we need to be really clear, because I think she posed a very good question. Because if that's the case, then nothing should be on the consent agenda. No, follow what I'm saying. What I'm saying is because if either we pull it at the beginning, right away, or everything be on the regular agenda item, because there are going to be questions that come up even after you read, because we get stuff to read that we don't get beforehand, and then sometimes questions do come up.
Well, I understand, but at the beginning of it was my understanding and being on the commission is that if something is approved, if the agenda is approved and we have consent items, that means theoretically, those are approved, and if you didn't want something on the consent agenda, at the very beginning, before we approve the agenda, the request is made to move it. I understand what Tabitha is saying, that she doesn't necessarily want it removed, she just has a question, so
Yeah,
that's
me
a
too.
different story. But I just want to make sure that I was clear going forward, that once we approve an agenda, we moving consent items, that should have been done when we approved the agenda.
And I also think something should be injected at the point of asking for the motion and the second. Somehow there's should be some language that says, is there anything anybody would like to be moved or something like
Well, I
that?
think they can say that anyway. In other words, if I make a motion to approve the agenda and Dr. Robinson, you say, I want to remove item 4C to the regular agenda, then that's the time that I say, okay, then that's my motion.
Before the second.
Well,
Or
that's
the second would need to agree with that. right?
from me watching city council meetings, and maybe they operate, I would imagine every board operates a little differently. I've always seen that happen right before like, the consent items.
Not being discussed. Yeah.
But I just think we would all like some clarity on
I'm just
it.
asking for clarification.
Same.
If you want to be very technical about it from Robert's rules standpoint, if you approve the agenda, that's the consent agenda is presented to you as a group. But if at that point you have a question or you want to take it off the consent agenda and pull it, that would require a motion to suspend the rules in order to amend the agenda at that point, and that would require a 2/3 vote.
But that would be at the beginning, am I correct, of the meeting?
No, at the beginning of the meeting, you could, when you're approving the agenda, you can, at that point, announce that you would like something pulled off of the consent agenda for purposes of individual action. But once you've approved it, then when you get to the consent agenda, you've decided at that point, or you have a question at that point, that you need to take it off of the consent agenda, you would have to have a motion to suspend the rules, which requires a 2/3 vote.
Okay, thank you. All right, so you want a motion to approve the consent agenda, and then Tabitha has a question, so I'd like her question to be asked before my motion to.
Why are we approving the consent agenda if we've already approved it when we approved the other agenda? So
We need a motion to approve the.
We need a motion to
consent
approve it all.
We have to have a motion to approve consent.
So, okay, so based on what Ty said, I want to be clear. If we do that, at this point, we can decide if we want to pull something off.
Yeah.
But with 2/3 of vote.
Yeah, so why do we need two motions to approve something that's already been approved?
This hasn't been approved. The agenda has been approved, but those items have not been approved.
So my motion is to approve the consent agenda with Tabitha's question being answered.
I have a question as
Dr.
well.
Robinson also has
Yeah, I have a
a
question
question,
as well,
yes.
yeah.
And Dr. Robinson's question.
But I think we still need some clarity on this, because it looks like maybe we're approving something twice.
No,
No.
we've approved the
I got it,
agenda.
and I'm just saying.
Okay.
Let's move
Okay.
on.
Okay.
Let's move on.
And so you need a second to,
I'll second that.
okay, all right, and then ask their questions and then we can vote.
So we asked the question before we vote.
I would like to know what your questions are before I vote.
Is that the procedure?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to get procedures straight, because there's a whole lot of stuff going
I
on.
know, I get it.
So who goes first?
I have D, which one did you have?
C,
Is that,
it's D,
yeah, both of them.
so both of them is from D.
Okay, I got a response from a question I asked via email. And when I started doing the math, what I want to make sure of is fiscally, because we're projecting that 90 people are gonna ride the bus and pay $5. Is that right? Is that right, Ms. Mary?
That's the estimate, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so with the estimate and then the overall cost, based on, we've done this a couple of years, do we have any data to support that we do come out in the good? Or how the data been reflected?
So, I'll get my So, we have run this service a few years now, so we do both, this is for the Port Wentworth service. This year it's a little bit different because we have
we have 2 buses running, and it's more of an express service, and then we will also have the Port Wentworth extension as well. But we have been cost neutral with this service. But again, it is an estimate, and it is our risk if we are not cost neutral.
So when we say cost neutral, it means we're not losing any money, we're not earning any. either.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, and then you said we're running 2 buses.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, oh, excuse me.
The screen is bright.
So with the 3B, we're running the 3B.
The 3B is a fixed route bus, yes.
That will be running during the,
That is the Augusta route that goes to, will go to Groves High School starting March 11th.
so this bus, the 3B does not go to Port Woodward.
The Route 5.
No, I'm talking Route 3B. It does not go to Port Wentworth.
Correct.
So that's my question. Where did Route 5 come from?
So when we did the Port Wentworth extension, there was a naming preference that was done. And so it was originally presented as there was the Port Wentworth extension, which was also known as 3B, and then the 3B new pattern to Groves High School.
Okay, but are you saying that 3B is no longer going into Port Wentworth? You've got a whole new bus and a whole new route that we don't know the travel pattern of, and it has not come before the board.
So the route that is now known as Route 5 was presented as the Route 3B extension.
Technically, that's a new route.
It had been presented as
3B extension. There is a difference between a bus going an additional distance than a brand new bus streaking out on a new trailer.
So the route that was presented was the Route 3B extension, which is a route that goes, it's the Route 3B extended to Port Wentworth.
Right. Why is 3B not being used to go into Port Wentworth?
So there is also a 3B. So there's now 3 buses that are running. So 2 of those buses are on what was formerly known as the Route 3B extension. And there is 1 bus that is the Route 3B and is a new pattern to Groves High School.
Right, but the 3B extension was supposed to be 1 bus, not 2.
It was 3 buses. It was presented as 3 buses.
Okay, I want to see the notes from that meeting.
But let me ask a question too while you do that.
Mm-hmm.
With the 3B and the 5, does that mean if you want to get on the 5, you got to pay a transfer fee from the 3B to the 5 or vice versa?
We don't have a transfer.
Because we never had a 5.
We don't do transfers?
Well, you have a 2-hour.
You would have to in order to go in the Port Woodward, because you can't take the 3B into Port Woodward.
So how would they get in?
How do the transfers work? You have a 2-hour window?
So you can do a transfer. So the Route 3B goes to Groves High School.
Right.
The Route 5 now goes to Port Wentworth, but will also go past on Route 21 to Groves High School.
But the 3B initially was supposed to be going into Port Wentworth, right?
Why is 3B not going into Port Wentworth?
Yeah, that's not clear.
So there is a route that is known as 3B that serves Augusta Avenue in Groves High School. So that is 1 bus. And then there is a route that was known as the 3B extension that now extends the 3B and goes to Port Wentworth. But instead of being called the 3B extension and then having a 3B, it is now being called Route 5.
But you know,
But if I took a 3B and I went to Grove High School, and then I wanted to go to Port Wentworth, I'll have to get off and get a transfer to get to Port Wentworth, right?
So most people who would be desiring to go to Port Wentworth would pick a route that went to Port Wentworth. So that would be.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, if I wanted to stop in Garden City.
You can, so if you are on, so there's a route with a headway that goes 1 hour and goes to Groves High School. There is a route with a headway that goes 1 hour and goes to Port Wentworth, effectively making there being a half-hour headway on that corridor. So now there's a bus every half hour on the
You
Augusta.
still have to get a transfer in order to get to Fort Wentworth, because you can't get there with 3B.
So if your final destination is Port Wentworth,
Mm-hmm.
and you had needed to make a stop in Garden City, you can take the 3B or the 5 or the 3 to Garden City, and those buses come every half hour essentially. If your final destination is Port Wentworth, that bus comes every hour, and you would need to take the Route 5. But if you're in Garden City and you want to go to Port Wentworth, you would need to take the Route 5.
Do we currently have stops in Port Wentworth? Do we currently have stops?
We are extending the stops in Port Wentworth to Rice Hope.
No, I'm saying, but do we currently have stops, bus stops in Port Wentworth?
We have some stops so the Route 3, which goes on Augusta, on Highway 21, that goes to the airport. So that pattern now has been extended. So now there's a route that goes to the Benton and Highlands, and that is the 3. So that route still exists. But now we also have a Route 5 that will go to more into Port Wentworth, which will go to the International Trade Center and all the way to Rice Hope communities.
So 3 buses, and all 3 buses are stopping at the same stops as they travel through Garden City. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, it doesn't sound like 5 is
Stopping at all?
Yes, it does, it does.
You does?
Does it begin in Garden City?
It begins at the ITC. All of our buses begin at the,
Right,
yeah.
but what's the route of Route 5? Where does Route 5 go?
It goes along, so Route 5 goes along Bay Avenue to the Food Lion, and then we'll go up Highway 21 to we'll go into Old Port Wentworth, and then we'll also service the International Trade Center, and it terminates at the Rice Hope.
What is Route 5's first stop?
The stop on Bay Street, I can't recall the.
And 3B, that's one of 3B's stops.
So the 3B goes along Augusta Avenue, and now Route 3 will also go along Augusta Avenue as well.
They sort of
Does it
go like
go
this.
to the same stop?
The routes are, so there is the same level of service. In fact, there's increased service on Augusta Avenue, and the same level of service that was on Bay is now continuing on Bay.
So if I get on 5 on Bay Street, I'm not making any stops, I'm going straight to Port Wentworth.
You would you can go to, there's stops that go like to the Food Lion, stops that are on Highway 21 that are in between here and Port.
Mary, to help facilitate the conversation, Ariel's going to go ahead and throw the Route 5 up there.
It sounds like Port Wentworth is getting its own bus.
Well, that was an intergovernmental agreement, they're not paying into the
Not its
taxpayers.
own bus, an extended bus, like we were extending a route. It wasn't supposed to get its own bus. Like not it's just a bus for Port Wentworth.
So as Ariel puts up, so the route.
No, only one is going into
Only one, that's
We got
5.
3
That's
buses
crazy.
running the same route
Three in Garden City.
with one going into Port Wentworth. So how many people are we expecting to get on this Port Wentworth special ed bus? Cause they get a bus all for themselves.
So in between, so this corridor here, so from the ITC to, Garden City, that's one of our highest production corridors, and we average about 20 to 25 riders per hour. So we anticipate to maintain that level of ridership. As we go into Port Wentworth, we anticipate based on the demographics that we'll probably have about 10 riders.
Shouldn't that be a micro transit route?
So there is a micro-transit service also that has been, this is all in the transit master plan, but there is a micro-transit service that will also serve this fixed route service.
But if we got a bus that's just for Port Wentworth, instead of extending a bus that already has passengers on it, that seems like it's spending more money.
It is not just for Port Wentworth. So the bus will continue to make stops, the same stops that Route 3 had made.
So if I'm on the side of the road at a bus stop and Route 5 comes by, it'll stop for me.
Yes.
Yes.
You're on a Route 5 stop, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which are now, the there are stops that had served Route 3 that are now being labeled Route 3, Route 5.
So we have 3 buses taking the same path, stopping at the same.
It's similar
Same
to Route
stop.
27 and 28 that go down Waters. They go
That's
every,
a lot of people riding that.
this is one of our highest ridden zones.
Yes.
And I think it
The growth
would
in
be
this
great.
area is
And it was
incredible.
just supposed to extend
Yeah,
into Port Wentworth.
that would increase the ridership.
That would
So
increase
now-
ridership. Now we got 3 buses.
So now you have a bus every half hour on that corridor. So instead of having an hour.
3B is a, you know, it's like, it's right behind 14 as another powerhouse, but
Yeah, but we're talking about 5. We're talking about 5.
Yeah, we're talking about 5.
So
well,
that-
which is now 3B extension,
No, it's another bus.
or was 3B extension.
It's another bus. It's another bus.
It's a whole new bus. It's a whole new route.
Yes, and so what's the, I guess my question is, what's the question? I mean, like, what are we talking about? These did, these all did.
No.
Not a new bus.
No,
Route
not,
5 did not come.
I don't think
3
buses,
extension.
we should not be planning how many buses are on our routes. We should be planning routes. The buses, we should be planning routes and frequencies. The buses is up to you guys to figure out how many you need to, you know, satisfy the desire of the route.
But when you talk about frequency, and then you're gonna add a micro transit to that same area.
The micro transit will serve a little bit further west, but then will connect, so there'll be a connection point to the fixed route system.
So is that a part of the intergovernmental agreement, or is that a part of the
That
tax base?
is part of the transit master plan.
And a part of the SMART grant,
But it's just
Dr.
within the tax
Robinson.
base? Is it-
It doesn't have anything to do with the tax base. The microtransit zones, remember, are funded through the SMART grant, and they're for everybody. And there's 2 that are in West Chatham, one of which is the one that she's talking about, and it's also in the master transit plan. And it serves, remember, it serves a little differently. Microtransit's more expensive overall to provide because you're talking about smaller vehicles, so less capacity and so forth, and it's also on demand. But it makes a connection to the fixed route, so that it can help feed and build the fixed route ridership, as well as serve intra-zone trips.
But I thought we talked about microtransit going to the routes that we cut in the county to pull those into fixed route, not just on demand.
No.
But they would take over those routes that we canceled.
What we've said is, it's not to take over the routes that are canceled, but it's to build system productivity. And I think that, you know, the master transit plan did outline, and we have added back service. Anything that we've cut, we've been consistently adding back service, and you all have been seeing that, you know, in the timeframe that we've been doing that for probably, 9 months now at least, maybe a
Right.
year.
As Commissioner Stone has pointed out multiple times, the big buses going into low ridership areas, we wanted to stop and put microtransit into those low ridership areas.
And we have done that.
That would not be on demand, that would be a route.
Well, no, it would be, all microtransit is on demand. All microtransit is on demand. That is the kind of service it is. And typically, and what we've been building out is a zonal system so that it can serve trips within a zone. So it prevents big buses, as you've just mentioned, from going into certain areas that where it might not be appropriate, but to make sure that we're still providing connectivity within that zone. But then it also connects to the fixed route, so that if you have that longer trip and these lines where we need higher capacity, that it's also connecting to that. So it's really about building out the system, and I think that was all. We can do another review of the master transit plan sort of scope of that, if that'll be helpful.
I thought that we were going to get something smaller to go into areas like off 204, where they only had 5 to 10 people riding. So we're saying that those people are gonna have to call and schedule a trip? That's not just gonna be a bus stop?
No, ma'am, they don't call to do it. Remember, it'll be just like catching an Uber or Lyft. You do it right there on your phone. It's very quick. It's not like paratransit. It's different than paratransit. But it's all on-demand service. Paratransit is an on-demand service as well as microtransit. But they operate differently. Complementary, but differently.
Yes, this is about St. Patrick's Day, correct?
Right, but again, we say that it's just about St. Patrick's Day, but what my question was more about, how do we ensure that we
we can stay neutral or either we making money. And I'm thinking adding that 5, which I'm still not clear on why that exists, only creates, and you got 3 buses, you got St. Patrick's Day going the same place. And even if you do the downtown route, doing St. Patrick's Day, things change. They do change, and, you know, so I'm just not clear on why we're doing this.
So the St. Patrick's Day shuttle, the special service, will just service 2 locations. So that will just go to the Rice Hope location and to the Newport Whitworth City Hall. The Route 5, which had been formerly known as the 3B extension, provides much greater service and serves areas like the International Trade Center, which is an employment center. So not everybody gets off with St. Patrick's Day. So those riders will still need transportation to that location. So it is not a special express service. It is regular fixed route service.
But they would have been on 3B anyway.
What was known as the
3B
3B extension.
Yeah.
Well, now they gotta get off and change buses, cause 3B can't go on Port Wentworth.
That's where I'm totally confused.
That's where I'm lost too.
You would have, yeah.
We never had a 5.
That's what I'm saying, so there were people in Port Wentworth that were still using the service, so what were they using before 5 came?
I don't think they were.
There was no service.
There was no service in Port
I mean, they
Wentworth.
might have
There-
walked
That was what
an
the
hour.
intergovernmental agreement was for back in, I think it was November.
Right, but that was just 3B extension.
There was no 3B extension.
No, we're talking
No,
about.
that's what we
government
created, that's what we
created.
voted on.
Yes, 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 yes.
So I would like the notes from that, everything about that extension. Cause I remember we got a lot of information on it.
And hopefully this wasn't one of those consent items where we just voted on it and just went through.
We definitely did not. We definitely did not.
Well, the
We
notes-
had a
the-
lot
the
of
notes-
conversations
the
about
notes will
this.
tell us that, yeah.
This was one where we also, in the past, have had Mr. Ritchie come in. You remember him, Dr. Robinson, I know you've queried him a lot about the service changes and so forth, asked lots of good questions. And this was also one that Mr. Ritchie has been here and presented on as well.
But what, I guess what the confusion is, never did I hear the word, the number 5 was always 3B
And
extension.
that is, and you are correct, that when it had been presented both to the board in November and in our transit master plan, it had been known as either the 3B extension or the 3C. Talking with operations and with our naming conventions, you know, you can't call, you know, it didn't make sense to call something either the 3B extension or the 3C. We wanted to designate this final destination as the Port Wentworth. So that's where the Route 5 designation.
It's the same information you've seen previously, but the number got changed just for clarity purposes, for purposes of the public's clarity that's using the service.
It
So.
sounds like there's a new bus
Yeah.
picking up, starting at the end of 3B.
Yeah.
It picks up where
No.
3B's ended,
I think
and
the
goes into Port Wentworth.
I think for me, the question is more about contraction. You know, when we did the intergovernmental agreement, how many buses was proposed for the intergovernment?
It was two
Two.
buses, and then there's a third bus.
No, I'm talking about the contract itself.
The contract is
itself
2.
is for 2.
Okay, so that's what we approved, and we approved.
And that's what they paid for. Remember, because they're paying for this outright out of general fund, so they paid all the capital cost. And then they're paying their year over year, but we true up every year what their operating costs are, because they understand that their operating costs are likely to increase year over year as we make improvements to operator salaries and benefits, and gas costs more and all those kinds of things. So there's a true up in our contract that occurs every year.
So the third bus is part of the intergovernmental agreement that Fort Worth is paying for?
No, the 2 buses are in there. The third bus is
It's
existing service.
Yes, correct.
It's existing service.
Okay, so we're taking 5 into Port Wentworth, where we have a governmental agreement, and we're paying for it. Is that
No,
what I'm
ma'am.
hearing?
We are, the part that is part of our operating budget is the Route 3B, which is that third bus.
Okay. This keeps getting more conflicted.
It does.
Because if the intergovernmental agreement involved 2 buses, which was 3B and 3B extension, or the 3B extension, how do we name the 2 buses in the contract?
I'd have to go pull the contract and look at it again, but the service that was described in the contract, both the type of service, the way the service is being provided and all that sort of thing is absolutely, we haven't changed a thing. It's actually what's in the IGA with them. And then we had an existing service that went to that area. So now it's all operating in a coordinated fashion.
I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna say this to the board members. Somehow, whatever we vote on should be what we vote on, and that's what should be presented to us. Any changes made should come back to this board in some form that we won't have all these conflicts going on right now, because if the contract was for 2 buses and one of them was not 5, then my question again is, where is 5 coming from? And if it's going into Port Wentworth, why is Port Wentworth not paying for a 3rd bus? Whatever that is. So I don't understand why the board is having to have this conversation right now when we should be dealing with a shuttle during St. Patrick's Day, but we're throwing in a 5 that we have never seen before, and we're expected to vote on and be okay with that. I'm saying to the board, I'm saying 9 members, I'm just one of 9, that's all I am.
I think the confusion is, it is something you've seen before, but I understand that this numbering, naming piece that we did to try to clarify for the public has become confusing. So what we'll do is we'll do a complete write-up of exactly what we've done and how we've done it. In addition to that, we'll also, I think, include an explanation of how the micro-transit zones in West Chatham are anticipated to serve the purposes, Director Stone, that you've asked us about many times with regard to fixed route, as well as how it connects to this. And we'll just do a write-up just on that for clarity purposes and distribute to the board.
What I need clarity on at this point now is that we've got people who are paying in the tax base and receiving services. We got this intergovernmental agreement that the municipality should be paying for, but they're still receiving services that other taxpayers are paying for. I need some, in that write-up, just help me understand that, because that's one of my concerns, because when I hear a 3rd bus going into Port Wentworth, and I hear about a governmental agreement that they're supposed to be paying for, there's something that's just not gelling with me, to be clear on what it is that CAT is really doing.
We'll explain that very clearly, because it is, Port Wentworth is paying for their service, and there are no other, there's not, I know we had this situation, you may recall, with Garden City, and there was some resolution that we're still working on between the county and, or I guess Garden City and the county are working on related to that. This is very different. In fact, we made a concerted effort to make sure that this was didn't involve any of that kind of confusion. So we'll make sure to describe it incredibly clearly, Dr. Robinson, and appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, I have one question from that. Probably for the board and staff. I want to know what is the problem with naming it 3C versus the 5, which I understand you want to separate it for Port Wentworth, but if you put 3C on there and think everybody will still know that it's going to Port Wentworth, what is the problem with that? With just calling it 3C, do the board have a problem if it wasn't 5? And do staff have a problem if it wasn't 3C?
So I mean, from a technical point of view, right now, we are in the process, we've submitted the data, the information to our Clever, who does our, the signage and all of that, the announcements and all of that information. So to change that number now would be at a cost to the board. I'm happy to make that change, but from a good transit practice, generally you try to avoid calling something a different pattern. You don't want to have confusion of 3B or 3F. Unless there's a reason for a pattern change, you won't want to use that number, letter combination unless it is a deviation of a pattern.
But you do have a pattern change. You do have a pattern change now.
But no, it's not supposed to be well, it was supposed to be an extension.
Yeah.
So if it's just an extension, I don't understand why it wasn't 3C to begin with, because calling it 5 sounds like a brand new route.
Sounds like
For a route, not a
But the route,
You could call it anything
yeah, but
you
it's
want.
not just the route, it's the number of people that's gonna be riding on that route.
Yeah,
And if dividing it up into 3 buses makes less people on the third bus, it seems like it's gonna cost more.
Well, you need
So
to.
again, we will provide this information and I will include information about good transit practice for route names. But this was a great discussion and I appreciate the information. And I think, again, the item on the table is the Port Wentworth, the special service for St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, but I think with, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but I think to Mr. Chairman's point is, I think the confusion is gonna come in when the people who we are targeting as riders try to get to the bus and they're looking at the 5 when it really is, again, the 3C that it should be. But how much will it cost for us to change?
I will look into that. We may have some time, but we are really cutting it very close.
What's the target date for the rollout?
March 11th.
March 11th, so.
And as Swinton noted, the rides have already been bid on. We've already printed what we call the paddle books. We're working on the schedules right now. That information has been sent.
But that's not the fault of the board or the riders.
No.
That's why that goes back again to, I think everybody around the table will probably say the same thing. If you're not deviating from an existing route to a new route, then it should be a C to extend that route, what we're talking about. And we probably have to push it back. If not, find a way to find out what our wrong is, because now we basically stepped there before talking to the board or talking to somebody else about where we are with that extension.
To push back on that, I don't necessarily know that anybody has ever addressed me with like best practices for naming it. So I don't feel strongly that it's not necessarily a good idea. I think.
But not knowing makes it not a good idea.
True. If you could inform us of sort of like what are some best practices for naming it, that'd be fine, maybe.
I think we'll go ahead and get you the other information. We'll turn that around very quickly.
But are we talking 3 buses or 2 buses? That's what I just need to know. Because we're talking 3 buses, so contractually, we only contract for 2 buses.
Because one of them was an existing bus.
We contract for 2 buses, and if you read the contract, there was 2 buses. So now, are we already outside the contract with the third bus?
I'm really not clear on it. I just know there's a brand new route. It's not an extension, and I think that if it's not an extension and it's a brand new route, then that's substantial. But apparently, they're saying it's not.
But it's outside the contract.
We were getting that information about the service change that was approved and the extension, and they were done at the same meeting.
But with the contract.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Check.
Now, we would have a motion and a second.
Check.
I'll second.
Definitely gonna do a roll call, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Director Emmons?
Did you restate the motion?
Hold on, what's the motion for?
We're voting for
The consent.
Consent agenda after the questions were answered.
Or discuss.
Okay, so we have
Ellen made the motion, I second.
so we have a motion by Director Stone and seconded by Director Odell to approve consent items for A, B, C, D, and E. I'll do a roll call vote, Chairman. Director Emerson?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Odell?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Stone?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Lockett?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Adams?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Robinson?
Yes.
Thank you. Director Leggett?
Yes.
Thank you. And Director Taylor? And Chairman Cody?
Yes.
Chairman, motion passed for the approval of item 4A through E.
Now, I have a question about 5A. They looked really great, but I would like more time to read them. It was formatted fantastic, it was well written, I just did not get through the entire book. And so can we vote on it? I mean, can they go ahead and continue to practice as they're doing based on this, and then we vote and approve it? tabling it? Because they can function based on department policy, right? And then we just need to approve it for the board. It looks fantastic. I just would like time to read all of it. But it was very well formatted. And, you know, I got through like the first fourth of it and it was, I would like to finish it.
So if you make a motion, I'll second it.
I'd like to table 5A until next board meeting.
5A.
Yeah, I second.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we have a motion on the floor and second by Director Odell and seconded by Director Robinson to table item 5A. Any further discussion before a roll call vote?
I would like a hard.
Yes, ma'am. Roll call. Okay, Director Emister,
Yes.
Director Odell,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Lockett,
Yes.
Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Robinson,
Yes.
Director Leggett, Director Taylor,
Yes.
and Chairman Cody.
Yes.
Chairman, motion passed to table item 5A.
Thank you. Going to, we have anything on 5D?
I would like for some reason, I don't remember, I didn't read this document, but it's stated, can somebody explain to me exactly what this is?
You have a printed copy?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have a printed copy. Can somebody, can staff explain to me what this actually is?
Can let Beverly go through the details, but this was for the purposes of, we have received suggestions for comments and comments for improvement of how we present materials and action items, as well as for the timeliness of doing so. And this is the changes based upon Ms. Dumas's work in receiving those comments, as well as from, in addition to the CAP Board of Directors, also from departments on how we could be clear and detailed in our analysis and so forth. It's a business process improvement.
Would it affect you dramatically if we had time to roll this over as well and vote on it next board meeting?
No, that's perfectly fine. I think we'll go ahead and start using it just because I think it's a good, better organizational tool, but no problem.
There's no problem with considering a policy or practice.
Okay.
I just would not want to vote and then come back later and have a comment.
Yes, sir. So that motion is to table, right? Okay. And I have that motion by Director Odell, the second? Director Leggett, okay, thank you. All right, Director Emister,
Yes.
Director Odell, Director Stone, Director Lockett, Director Adams,
Yes.
Director Robinson, Director Robinson,
Yes.
Director Leggett, Director Taylor,
Yes.
and Chairman Cody.
Yes.
Chairman, motion passed to table item 5B.
Reports now, sir.
Next, we'll be moving to our executive director's report. We'll be turning the floor to our CEO.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a few items before we move into the regular communications report that I just wanted to cover with you today. Next slide. Legislative update. As you all recall, we had made an initial request of $780,000. We did get the funding through the Georgia Transit Trust Fund. That's now formula funding that we receive. And that was, as you recall, per approval of the board, allocated to additional electric vehicle purchases. And we have continued to pursue funding to continue to do fleet expansion and electric vehicle charging, which is really important. We had requested this in the FY24 budget. Chatham County has received a significant amount, whether it's the announcement, very exciting announcement of the new dental school, the continued support for the expansion of the convention center and so forth. But there was some discouragement from continuing to seek funding in FY24 amongst sort of all the players from this area. And so we have backed up and we have instituted our $780,000 request as an FY25 budget matter. And this was provided to you in Snapshot last week. We've also been working with the regional partners and the delegation on a workforce mobility and connectivity study committee. Study committees can be very useful tools for engaging legislative interest and setting the stage for future legislative requests and funding and so forth. And so we all know the kind of growth that is occurring in the area with Hyundai, but also with Gulfstream and Amazon and the Georgia Ports Authority and so forth. We know the kind of requests that we're getting for looking at expanded service, and we know that there are other partners in the area. So this study would be merely one that looks at mobility options, partners with those that are looking at development of new housing, and figures out what is the analysis of strategies and partnerships for transportation and mobility services, and what is a sort of blueprint for how that moves forward look like. So it'll be built upon the foundation of the work of the Coastal Empire Plan that was done by Georgia DOT, as well as the CEDA Workforce Development Plan. So we're excited to see that continue to move forward, and that's been the focus of our legislative initiatives.
So the study would be done by somebody else and wouldn't cost us anything?
No, ma'am, it's not going to cost us anything. We'll be participants in it, though. Then on file management, this is an area that we know that we've got significant needs to improve our file management process. We are looking at the development of a system, both the planning of that system is where we are right now, what we need to do, how we need to do it, and so forth. And then we're looking at a SharePoint-based program for how that we would actually execute upon that file management system. I know that Director Odell, that's something that you've had some real interest in.
You want to expand your interest to
I'll let Mark.
It'll be a SharePoint site where we can determine who has access to what based on active directory privilege. So if you are the director, you will see what's in the marketing folder, but if you're not, you will not.
Right, so will the system automatically name the documents, or would you have a format that you want them named in?
We haven't gotten to that point yet. That's what the project to develop all that is working on now. Then the next item I wanted to mention to you is training. I know that that's been something that's been of interest to the board. I wanted to let you know a few things that are going on right now. There's always operator training going on, but starting tomorrow, there will be forklift training. We also have Gillig, who is our bus vendor, who is coming in. Their service reps, and I know that this is something that Dr. Robinson always wants to know, their service reps come in and do training for us free of charge. And so they'll be doing air conditioning training. There's all kinds of things. I think these are great things because they sound like small things, but what are we doing? We're building skills. We're building capacity in the workforce. And I think that that's an incredible thing. We're still working on our agreement with Savannah Tech. That work has not started yet, but we hope to soon. Mr. Flanders is working on that. And then we are bringing in consumer credit counseling again to do a financial literacy training. You know, we started that a year and a half or so ago. Really important to continue that in addition to the work that we've been doing also pro bono from Bowen Falligant. Consumer Credit Counseling is a nonprofit, and they come in and do that as a community service. And then Bowen Falligant has been working with us on the estate planning side, so wills, powers of attorney, those kinds of things. We offer that, I think, now twice a year, where there's a session set up for employees who don't have those kinds of things to be able to get that done. You'll see that in FY25. We're going to be requesting an increase across, and it'll be for specific things. So you'll see all of that in the FY25 budget.
And could you also bring somebody in to explain to them the benefits of insurance renter's insurance is like $130 a year. If they get flooded in a hurricane, they're gonna have to come to the county or the city to look for placements.
I think we can reach out to Sterling Seacrest and ask them to come in and do some training on insurance benefits, and we're glad to do that. They do that when they come in and do the annual insurance work, but I think to do it in the interim time would be a good thing.
They don't talk about like renters and homeowners and stuff like that.
We can ask them to do that. Then on the
Like
triennial.
training, like educating people on insurance,
And
employees.
what you need,
ICOM.
yeah,
So confusing.
what you need, how much you need,
And I
and
want to
so
go to the
forth.
forklift thing too.
Okay. So you're going to sign up for the board,
I will
and you're
wave
going
my
to be.
life away. I just want to drive a bus.
So next item, triennial review updates and reviews and audits that were accomplished through 2023. The triennial review update was completed toward the end of 2023, and then we had a lot of back and forth. You know, I think you may know that FTA does those triennial reviews through contractor. It's not an actual FTA employee that comes in, it's their contractors that come in and do those. So there was a lot of back and forth between FTA staff reviewing, the contractor reviewing, and then us responding to things that went back and forth. And it got done toward the end of the year, right during the holidays and the break and all that. And so we did not, I think Beverly and I both thought that we had sent it out, and we have not. So it's going out to you today so that you can see it. But I'll tell you the sort of primary areas, though. We did have no deficiencies were found with FTA requirements in 19 of the 23 compliance areas, but deficiencies were found in 4 areas, and I don't think any of these are going to be surprising to you. Maintenance, and they were pretty serious, and we all know the deferred maintenance situation. Procurement, DBE, and EEO, and then there were 3 repeat deficiencies from the last triennial review. So you'll get the copy.
4 out of 19 is not bad.
Not bad. But we got some pretty good sized work to do within that 4, and I don't want to try to diminish the scope of that at all.
I think that y'all should be glad that it's only 4.
Yeah. Well, you know, the last 2 years, I think part of this too also reflects a lot of work that we've done over the last 2 to 3 years to be preparing for this. Now, we have put in, just so you know, from a management perspective, we have put in place a process where we now have a team that, rather than waiting, you know, what you do is triennial reviews come around once every 3 years, and so what do? You wait until it's almost time, and then you start scrambling to put everything together. We've because this year was such a scramble, we've put in place a new management process. We now meet every quarter to not only work on right now we've got 30, 60, 90-day responses that we're working on that are due on the current one. But in addition to that, we're meeting every quarter, the management team that's responsible for this, and we're starting our prep now and building our files now so that in 3 years, the next time, no scramble. We can just go.
Can I get a hard copy, please?
Yes, ma'am. We will give that to you. And Ms. Cutter, would you mind rolling through really quickly all the other audits that we accomplished in 2023? Just name them off because it was substantive.
We had the GINA audit that dealt with how CAT spent money after Hurricane Matthew, and that occurred in 2016. We had the triennial, we had the FMO, financial management oversight review. We had a safety audit as well. We had FTA. See what I'm missing.
I guess we just wanted to point that out because I think that, you know, the annual. So I just wanted to point all that out because the amount of review and audit work in 2023 was large. And I know it's not the kind of work that you typically see and, you know, get to understand all the details of, but it is really important work. And so I just wanted to point out 2023, because of the triennial review, was an especially, you know, active year for us. And then the last thing I wanted to do was just to roll through a report that I also provided to you recently on 2023 and 2024 accomplishments and sort of a prospectus of where we're going. So we are in large measure due to the great work of our CFO Cutter and our entire management team, as well as this board. We enjoy a balanced budget and a healthy, well-managed fiscal foundation. We have prudent, effective management and success at bringing in new funding that has been key to that outcome. That $14 million that came in last year is a tremendous impactor in addition to the things that you typically, know about, like, savings because of vacant positions and those kinds of things. But that was a big impactor. Grants and new funding that are expected in addition to regular funds that we get, whether that's fundings through the county, the city, partners, or our formula funds, is we had 3 ferry-related earmarks and ferry boat program allocations totaling $1.5 million. We got the Fuse grant for $180,000. We have the GTIB grant partnership through the new Community Improvement District. That'll be $1.1 million. That'll be a partnership funding to the West Side Dock. Application is in process, and we'll see if that one gets funded. SLIP 3 dredging by the county that'll be completed by the end of the year with a value of $1.75 million. The City of Savannah's contract for the DOT shuttle and the service expansions in Garden City and Port Wentworth have totaled $3,005,577. That's $320 in new capital and almost $2.7 million in new operating dollars. The Georgia Transit Trust Fund formula funds that we received this year was just shy of $400,000. And then our 2023 legislative agenda that we just mentioned, we had the $3 million we received in 2023, and we have that 2024 ask of $780,000. In addition, key fundamental foundational pieces of how you move a transit system forward are a strategy and vision that you have to have in order for all the other pieces to be guided forward. The Master Transit Plan adoption, the COA TDP update, and the Zero Emission Bus Plan are all projects that I hope you are proud of, because as a board, you led the success of those moving forward. In addition, just to roll through a few of the projects and programs. So we've got 2 new hybrid ferries that are under construction. You've been getting those construction updates periodically. Delivery in November. A 3rd hybrid ferry that should be advancing to bid with the identification of those new earmarks that we mentioned earlier that fulfill all the funding needs. The DOT shuttle expansion that occurred outside of downtown to the west side neighborhoods, including Carver Village, Cloverdale, and up to Victory Drive. That was an absolutely watershed historical moment for us for the first time that has now moved outside of just downtown proper. The service expansions to Garden City and Port Wentworth, Hyundai, Amazon, Wayfair, and Gulfstream Future Service Planning, the SMART Grant Award, and we hope what will be a very successful SMART Grant 2 application in 2024. The ferry maintenance, Hutchison Island facility design and upcoming bid, the West Side Dock bid, and I just mentioned that to you, the partnership with the CID. The paratransit maintenance facility, we just met with the city this week on the potential donation of property for that to occur. The environmental and design work is underway there, preliminary design. We're continuing to move from reorganization to rebuilding. The countywide stop and shelter inventory is underway, and you should have a report at the March or April board meeting on that work. The Fair Policy Study you heard from today, the Fuse Executive Fellowship, we've got a meeting coming up here in about another week or so, couple weeks, with regard to the candidates that are going to be serving in that fellowship for selection. We won the 2023 Savannah Chamber of Commerce Environmental Excellence Award. Our branding refresh is coming forward, and the CatCast podcasts continue to be very exciting broadcasts, and the one coming up is on paratransit. We were visited by U.S. DOT Secretary Pete Buttigieg. We were also visited by Paul Skoutelis, who's the APTA CEO, and then the CEO National Conference for APTA was held here just a few weeks ago. So no doubt CAT is on the map and on the move, And we are excited to move forward on the critical issues that are facing us in 2024, the primary of which is local funding, so that we can be sure to capture that $8 million in CAP formula funding for which we currently have no local match. And then continued assessment on foundational issues, business processes, and so forth. So I want to thank everyone, including this board, for the support that you give us and for the enormous amount of accomplishment that we continue to make.
I know you had to rush through that, but with the Fuse grant, where are we active with that again? Can you help, because I'm really interested in that Fuse grant, so.
The grant, after your approval was executed, we're coordinating with Fuse on their recruitment of candidates, and then they're going to bring candidates forward, and we'll sit down with the city as the funding partner and meet to look at what those candidate profiles are and what their background experience is. We'll be conducting interviews and then looking at who ends up becoming the person that's selected to be with us here for a year.
Is it possible for me to attend?
Of course.
Did you keep me
Yes, ma'am.
abreast?
Absolutely. I think that was it, though. I just wanted to be sure that we brought all these things forward and that we had the chance to share them with the public today, because they don't see Snapshot and they don't get to see some of the incredible amount of progress that's been made. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to.
I'm sorry, before we move to the next one, can we grab lunch?
Yes, ma'am.
And just,
It's up to the chairman.
so this is almost a point.
Yes, we can take a recess. We're at lunch.
I was on a roll. I was on a roll.
You okay, Dr. Robinson? Okay, that's okay. Okay.
Let's do lunch.
No, we're recessed, we're on break.
How you doing, sir?
Y'all doing all right today?
Yeah, doing great.
Don't leave before I get a picture of the view.
Me? Oh. Okay.
Cause I gotta pass it on.
Okay.
Wait before I forget.
Gotta get a picture.
Yeah, I gotta pass it
All
on.
right, yeah, you gotta do it.
Gotta pass it on.
We are on 6B, service delivery report.
Where's my,
They see how it works. That's what my daughter did.
no, we went ready to go to communications, like I said.
Do you want to know the same?
I think I want to put it, because that's what I had before I had Mercedes. And I really like it. My daughter was talking about palm. The little palm, that look like little foxes.
All right, thank you. Now, welcome everybody back to our board meeting, February 27th, 2024. We will now continue with our executive director's report with Mr. Our CEO, Mr. Tomasi.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to turn it.
Dr. Tomasi. Yes.
I'm going to turn it over to Ariel Johnson to give the communications portion of our report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board of Directors, staff, and the public. I will be presenting quickly our Marketing and Communications Department update. I wanted to start with some information of our progress with our rebranding initiative that Madison, our Marketing Communications Manager, first presented, I believe, in January. Where we are now is identifying some of the scope of work that we're trying to present to these companies to do the rebranding work. And those are visual identity, messaging, digital transformation, on-ground initiatives, partnerships, and sustainability. And we will definitely keep the board updated with how that's going and moving forward.
Now, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure what you just said. When you said the rebranding scope of work, this means that we're farming this out for somebody else to do for us?
Yes, ma'am. This is just internal. We have not reached out to anybody just yet. We're just presenting some areas that we believe our rebranding of CAT needs focus on.
And an ITB action would be brought before the board in order to authorize it going out to bid.
Yes. We wanted to give an update about our Zero Fare Student Pilot Program. The Student Zero Fare Pilot Program started on January 29th through the collaborative efforts between CAT's Marketing Communications Department and various other departments like planning, operations, financial. We all came together to want to do something for the students here in Chatham County. As of February 12th, over 200 students have already downloaded their student pass from our website, and those are students who do not have a school-issued ID, or maybe even students who may have lost their student ID. They're able to download the pass and use it again on our buses. Data from operations team, we have 100, since February 12th, we've had 106 college students, that's an average of 20 daily, and more than 1,300 K through 12 students utilizing this pilot program.
So they're actually getting on the bus?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We are in constant talks with the school board, giving them this data as well and giving updates to them as well. They have. Yes, they have. Since the very beginning, they were very excited. The education board, staff, teachers are trying to figure out how they can get involved to be involved, but that's a little, yes, sir.
So on the bus themselves, how do we account for that?
So we have
we scan something or?
Yes, so they will show college or students, they will show their ID in some form, whether that's on the phone or their badge. Our bus operators know whether to key in for K through 12 or college students to track it on when they come on the bus. So that's how we accumulate the data.
You know which bus are the most active?
That I do not know, but I can get that answer to you.
I was just wondering because you got schools in different parts of the city. And I was
Yes,
wondering
ma'am.
which one.
Yes, ma'am.
I was going to mention, Director Lockett, this is one where I have people come up to me at church, people come up to me just out in the community. This is the program that people have gotten really excited about. This and Cat Connects. You know, we hear, people will just voluntarily come up to talk about those things. So I think that we're certainly reaching a part of the community with need, and it's important.
Very true. And we do want to give a kudos to the school board for helping us spread the information to the parents and to their own community that they have. To piggyback off of Mr. Massimo, I was going to Chick-fil-A for a milkshake after work, still had on my CAT ID, and the person who took my order said, "Is it true that you guys are doing this student pilot program for free for students?" I said, "Yes, apply, get on the bus."
So it's a pilot program, so hopefully, once the pilot ends, what do we expect? What can we expect?
I think we want to evaluate after the pilot whether or not we want to bring forward a recommendation to you to launch a program that is a funding partnership program with the schools, or whether we want to continue this as a zero fare part of our service.
Similar to what we have with Savannah State.
We could consider that, or we may make a recommendation to you to continue this as zero fare, and it would be an expansion of the zero fare portion of what we do with the DOT shuttle, what we do with the ferries, what we're doing with the one micro transit zone pilot in East Savannah. So we're evaluating both of those things, and we'll come forward with what the financial impacts look like that is, so that the board and the community can understand all that and make, a very well-informed decision as to how we move forward.
When will the pilot end?
The pilot ends May 31st. So it was just one full semester of school. And like Mr. Massimo said, that's when we'll get together with all the departments to reevaluate, to look at the numbers, of course, involve the school board as well, to see how we move forward.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So February recap for January outreach, as was mentioned by the union. We invited staff and the union to be a part of the MLK Junior Day Parade. We're all looking forward to the St. Patrick's Day Parade as well. We, Marketing Communications, participated in the School Board Success Expo, where that was another opportunity for us to spread the knowledge about the student pilot program. We also in January visited certain senior homes to let them know about Cat Connects to get that interest going there. The Cat Tracker, as you may recall in the report for January, the December numbers were not represented. We couldn't get it due to a technical glitch with Google, but now they are reported in this report. Apple had more than 900 new users. Google had more than 30 new users in the month of January. And there were, for the month of December and January, there were more than 800 monthly active users on Apple devices, more than 2,000 active users on Google devices. Our social media continues to see increase, and we are expecting even more with the start of St. Patrick's Day activities starting to roll in, and people wanting to know information about what CAT is doing with how they can get on the bus to get to where they need to go. We usually see a big jump in our social media numbers during that time.
One other thing I want to mention, it doesn't show up in CAT's social media numbers proper, but on LinkedIn, as an example, the weekend that we had the Aptus CEO seminar here, we had a post on LinkedIn. It was under my account, and in one day we had 4,000 views. So we were getting real traction that was putting the emphasis on Savannah, on CAT, on Chatham County, and we looked CAT proud that day.
Yes, ma'am. CAT in the news. In the month of January, Chatham Area Transit was mentioned in 98 newscasts throughout the local media. Those news releases included CAT Connects, a push to graduation, weather impacted service with the weather event that happened early January, public meetings on the bus stop inventory project, and of course our holiday schedule for the MLK Junior holiday. What's next for CAT? In the month of February, we are the Marketing Communications Department is still focusing on pushing out more information, more interest about the Zero Fare Pilot Program. As we stated earlier, it doesn't end until May, so we want to keep pushing for it and let more students know that this is available. We are preparing for St. Patrick's Day preparations and rider guides. As we created those last year, we think that was a really good help for the community and the public who are not familiar with CAT to know where to catch a bus, what buses are going to ITC, what are not, things of that matter. We are doing with Mr. Sanders leading us the Doing Business with CAT. That is underway. We have service expansions, getting these schedules out for the new services that starts March 11th. We are preparing a ribbon cutting ceremony with Port Wentworth. I know you guys received a calendar invite for March 8th. Thank you guys for accepting. However, with the meeting on yesterday with Port Wentworth, we will be changing that to Monday, March 11th. So you guys will receive an updated calendar date and time for that. And then we will be also moving forward with our Smarts Grant Pop-Up Community number 2, which in all we have 4. So that's all I have for you guys today. Are there any questions? All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
The next update is our Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Tomasi.
Good afternoon, Chairman Cody, Board of Directors, my executive team, and the CEO. Normally my presentation is so long, but today I'll try to kind of cut corners and make it a little short, but it'll be brief to the point. Bev, can I start with the painting or do that at last? Okay. All right, so can you put that on? Yeah. Before my presentation, last meeting we talked about interior color for our building, our car central, so I'm going to present some colors. And it's coming, okay. If not, let me do my presentation and then we put that at the end. Thank you. Now, the first one here kind of messed up with the screen, but that is what, and if I can point you this one here, yes. So that's the gray that originally we had for the building. But we have so many colors to choose from. I personally would love this very one here. But then it calms people down. When they're stressed out, they look at the wall and everybody's calm. That's what we need here. But that's just my choice. So we're gonna pass these ones out for the board, and then they can probably take a vote, or let's see which ones the majority.
Are we confining the board to these selections only?
Okay.
No, I'm asking a question.
What's the question?
Are we confining the board to these selections only?
Oh, yeah, I thought last time we talked about it, the majority of the board members wanted it.
If I may, I think choosing paint selections by committee may be not a great idea.
Okay.
Because that never works out.
Okay.
But I think if, just to sort of go back to our encouragement at the last board meeting was, if we were presented with a colorful palette, I think we would be, amenable to that.
Okay,
But
so
But I don't think that having us sort of like, I like
Okay, so.
HC-105 is necessarily like.
Okay, Well, the first one is mostly, can we go to the first? That is the commonly used color. It just blended in with that, so that's pretty much like pretty much like this color. Yeah.
And
That's why I chose. I chose the one on the side. Yeah, yeah.
without looking at like a paint chip, because the way the color looks there is different than that screen, and my copy is different than Gertrude's.
Yeah, so-
all these colors, whether it's printed or projected, are gonna be totally different. That's why I don't think doing it by committee.
Yeah, okay. Well,
You'll
then
lose-
we just stay with our
we'll
own
get upset
choice.
by that.
We're gonna stick with our own choice and,
Do what you think is.
okay, all right, good. I'll have a color and I'll let you all know. Okay.
You already pointed out that you like the.
Yeah, yeah, that is kind of calm, with, yeah. So if you go, yeah, this one would be my choice.
Have we layered green on top of it to see what the sign looks like layered on top
This
of
would
that
be
color?
mine. Sorry.
Have we layered the sign on top of it to see what the sign looks like, that green looks like with that gray?
We might have to zoom that in. If not, what we'll do is probably get a hard copy, like, on a card.
We can check with AT&T and see if they can provide us the actual.
Yeah, okay.
No, you know the green that we have on our sign? I wonder, green looks different on different grays. And all of these are some kind of gray. And so I'm wondering if you put our cat green on top of the gray, which gray does it go better with? That's what I'm trying to ask.
So the color's gonna be a gray regardless.
Looks like it's gonna be one of those.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's all gray, right?
Yeah, or we can change that too, so I guess,
And to add some context, what the board approved last month was actually this color written in the quote, but the vendor stated that if the board wanted to go with any other color out of this palette, that would be okay with no additional charge.
So that's the only balance.
Yes.
It'd just be good to put the green, the cat green up next to those and figure out, because it's gonna look different on, each of those is a little different.
What if it's
cut
cute?
green.
What if it's what?
What if it's pukey? I can add
Pukey?
green to it, yeah.
Okay,
Make it
well,
more
we'll
gay. Because, I mean, we really
evaluate.
should use colors that complement gray. I mean, green. Our green.
Yeah, well, let us look
Cut
at it,
green.
and then we'll, yeah.
We have a tough green, but I would just say, I think, don't let us choose the color.
Yeah,
because we'll
I
all
could
just
see why
hate
you
each other
said
by
that.
the end of it.
But
And-
the thing about our green is that we can change the gradation of it. We can make it a little darker, and people wouldn't notice. Because it would still be,
It'd still be green.
it'd still be green. But, you know,
That's gonna be an important part of the rebranding strategy too, and we've talked about that, is how do you refresh that, and maybe it's some other shade of green that's still a more modern, maybe more fresh green, but still green, and still could be recognized as cat green. So,
because right, that's almost like a lime green, what we have.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, we
I'm
can,
green.
we can kiss that goodbye.
Yeah, I think it's kind of lime.
Okay. I think we're gonna revisit, the color, next time around, all right?
Thank
So- Yeah, my first slide. I have very good news to share with the board and the public watching us. So, our on-time performances have been here, never even made it to 70%. Now, the board target is 90%, and for the first time, I've been here, a year, 4 months, our on-time performance is close to what the board KPI says. So the month of January, we had 83%. Now, question is why all of a sudden we jumped from 65 to 83? And the answer to that is that we're using the Clever Public on-time performance, which we were not using. So moving forward, that captures on time. If the bus get to a time point, it records that instead of the general one that we were using. So moving forward, we're using a Clever Public on-time performance, and we have to expect the on-time performance to be, if not close to 90, probably within that ballpark of 80, which is very big change. And I'm very excited about that. We should be using technology to capture all data, and that's how we can move forward. To see the KPIs that the board have set up is just no KPIs. It measures our performance, and this shows that the buses are on time or not. If they're not on time, people get discouraged, ridership goes down. So if a bus is reliable, on time, yes, ridership is going to increase. Okay. So now back to ridership. Month of December, we had 156,247, and January was a little bit low. Now, what you might see, that revenue for January might go up, and you're wondering why is ridership low and then revenue is high. Some people buy bus passes, and so the next report, we're gonna categorize fare bucks, bus passes, and all that to let you know where revenue is coming from. It's just so. If you see that in the finance report, that's why ridership is low and revenue is high. This is my favorite slide, the KPIs. Every company, either transit industry, corporate America, everybody rely on KPIs. That's the only way we can measure our performance. And I put another column to just show last month KPIs versus the month of January. And as you can see, Dr. Robinson and myself agree that color coding is very important. A red means it's not good, green is go, just like a traffic light. So if you see the KPIs performance on month of January on that column that says card measurable performance, everything is good except the gross cost per revenue mile. The board wanted, $6.85. The month of December was a little bit high, lower. And this KPI, the lower the better. So the board said less than or equal to. So if this number goes lower, it's always better. So that's why January column shows red, because comparing that to December was $4.08. We went up 2 cents. Not a big deal, but just to let you know. Other than that, everything captures very nicely on the KPIs. And I just added this slide last month, and I'll be talking to more about the KPIs every month. This is the only way we know how we're performing. Next one, please. Now, we're going to start using this language, on-demand services, instead of paratransit or this. Now, on-demand is paratransit, microtransit, Cat Connect, anything on demand. So our new department is called on-demand services. I have been able to separate on-demand from fixed route. So the on-demand have their own workstation, and that covers all our on-demand. Paratransit, microtransit, which is coming up, and Cat Connect. And I have some good news to share about Cat Connect when we get to my last slide. The on-time performance on the paratransit side is very good. Now, I always want to explain why this number is high. In the past, we were not using the window. And the window is, we're going to be at your house 9 o'clock to pick you up, but we have a window of 15 minutes. So even when we get there 9:15, 9:14, we are on time. So in the past, we were not using the window. That's why the paratransit on-time performance was low. And it's way above even what the board target is, which is always a good news. And when we start microtransit in March, we're going to be reporting all the on-demand ridership, on-time performance, and all that data that we need to measure ourselves up. Now, paratransit ridership, I have been saying this, and this is exactly what is happening. If you have more manpower, you have new fleet, and they don't break down when people are going to dialysis, you're going to have demand, because now people can count on your service. And that's exactly what's going on. When we got paratransit almost to capacity, fully staffed, we replace old vehicles with 20 new fleet. Ridership is always even higher than the average KPI that the board set. And people are speaking highly of the paratransit service. We even have extra board. In other words, in the past, you have unassigned ridership. That means people that couldn't get on the manifest because we couldn't service them. Now it's 0, and still have maybe 1 or 2 people sitting on extra board in case something happens. That's how the service that we should be providing to the public, and I'm very happy that everything that we planned came along. So.
Dr. Manny, real quick on all, it's hard for me to read the graphs when they're in 3D because I'm not sure if I'm sort of looking at this column, is that like 5,000 or is it
That's why
4,000?
So what I've done because of how people cannot see 3D.
Could you just keep the graph flat instead of making it 3D? Just keep it a flat
wonderful.
graph?
Okay. All right.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah, I'm
Because
here
then
to
I can
service
just
the
look
board, yeah.
across and see,
Yeah.
okay, that's,
3D is more like the updated, but I'll go to the normal graphs. moving
okay,
forward.
that'd be
Okay.
super helpful.
I promise you, next time
Thank
we're
you.
gonna see no more 3D.
I'm old school, I've been noticed to tell myself.
Okay, so the Marine ridership is low. And ever since I've been here, it's always high. And the reason being that the month of January was no much action. Anytime they have all these conventions, like even this time when we have the CEOs coming from all over to Savannah, using our services, we're gonna see some high ridership on the February reporting. So this is not far from December, but at least not up to the board target.
One
So-
thing, a quick reminder on this one though, Dr. Manny, is one other thing that impacts ridership is we have one vessel operating right now. The Susie King Taylor is just being held right now, can't be operational, and the other 2 are in the yard or under various states of repair. So we cannot wait for those 2 new ferries to get here in November, but we're running one vessel right now.
Okay, but I hate to pick this apart a little bit, but that graph doesn't match the data.
Which one are you looking at?
The
20?
the green,
So-
2023, it looks like it's at 45,000.
This is the target, right? And this is the green.
Yes, so look at the green on the 2023 green, it's at 45,000. Because follow the line diagonally.
Yeah, the graphs don't match the numbers.
This one here says 40.
Oh, yeah, a little bit up, yeah.
Well, you're saying that the difference is really only about 1,000 riders, but that's like
And look at
10,000 riders.
So look at this, right? Follow the line. I think you don't like 3D, and I promise you.
But even if it wasn't in 3D, what I'm saying is that like,
If you look at the lines, this is the lines, right? Yeah, that's the nuance. Yeah.
yes, I get the line thing. Even if it wasn't in 3D, that column
Yeah.
is much. I mean, you're only looking at a difference of about 2% difference, or less than that.
So this is the target. You all got that, right?
I got that.
So this is the green one for FY. Which one is this? This is December. Okay. And this is the January one.
Yeah, that's not a difference of 1,000. That's a difference of maybe like 10,000.
You'll do it.
Yeah. You know what? I will stay away from 3D and give you the normal old graph.
All right.
That you're all used to. Okay. I have one thing to say about this. If you can see the electric buses is very low, right? That's why it's in red. So we expect, why was it low? They were not using the electric buses because of charging system. We were counting too much on Georgia Power, thinking by now all the charging stations will be implemented. So what we have done, the maintenance guys have come up with a plan. Some are staying very late to charge, make sure that when the vehicles come in, they all be fully charged so that we can use them. So next month report, you're going to see that 2,764 is going to go up because we don't have the charging, but we're finding a way to have them fully charged. So they started last week, they were all going out. So I expect my report next month to offset this number, a higher number. That's why it's in red. And you all know what that means, right? The mean distance between vehicle failures, how long can we run before our vehicles break down? The KPI on this is 1,200. National average is about 14. And so anything close to or above 1,200 by the board target, that means it's good. The only thing I don't like about this is that the electric vehicles, they were not fully charged, they were not utilized. They were spending more, using more of the gasoline. So the gas only have high mileage because they try to ignore the electric ones because they were not fully charged. So we have to manage the fleet very well, and we're going to be doing that next time. Please. And again, I promise all of you, no more 3D. All right, so card mobility. This is another slide that I added to see. This is customer service, right? So customers concerned. What I did really want, talking about rudeness, driver's rudeness, late buses, and all that sums up. This is something that we start to address because if I'm getting on the bus and the driver is rude, and then I come again as rude, I complain, nobody's doing anything, I find another way. Everything that we can do to please passengers is how our ridership is going to go up. So this is another slide that I personally added, and if the board entertains it, I'll be reporting this every month. If not, just like the 3D, I'll take it out. Okay? All right, next one. Okay, so this is the call center. And I remember Director Odell wanted to see how many missed calls and how many voice messages that people left. So we added that column to see 49 voice messages and 548 missed calls, which is not good. That means the longer we stay on the phone, we're going to be missing all this calls. So we'll start capturing this. And
I think if you can encourage them to go to voicemail, if you have that person and they realize they're going to call back on voicemail, because those missed calls are probably multiple people calling multiple
yes, multiple times, yeah.
I doubt if it's actually 548.
Well, that's what the data is saying, meaning the missed calls, they have a data to see how many calls that came in that nobody answered.
Yeah, Dr. Manning, the system is not, working when it's supposed to call you back. Like if they're busy, you say, hit number 6, to call you back, but it usually never does. You have to call them back.
Okay.
If the system was working, then you wouldn't have so many repetitive phone calls because it would call them back automatically, but it's not doing that.
Yeah, and also part of the problem, I was there yesterday, they have 5 people working on a given day. So the FY25, we added more staff. Because now we're expanding. We added Microtransit Connect, Card Connect, all these services. If something is wrong, they're gonna call that number. So I have asked, I'm working with VAR to scale up the manpower, or I would say staff.
So you're going to start off with what, 2 people?
We're asking for 4.
You're going to add 4?
Yeah, because now, this is what the problem is. The call center closes earlier than our fixed route operations, which shouldn't be. The call center should be open to 10 p.m. because that's when our last bus comes to the garage. So
You probably don't need everybody till 10. So you could probably cut down to 2 people, which you close at what time, 8?
now they close at 6 weekends and 8 weekdays.
Because if you close at 8, you could probably have 2 people to man you for 2 hours.
Yeah, we even
Y'all
say,
don't get that many phone calls between 8 and 10 that would require you to have the full staff.
yeah, what I'm worried about is when people call, there's no answer at all. See, when people call after that 8 hours, guess what? The call is enrouted to the command center, which is the fish route. They are busy fishing the work for tomorrow. So sometimes nobody even answers the call at all. And I think,
So if you leave 2 people between 8 and 10, you don't think they could catch those calls?
well, for now, if it's only fixed route, but we added more. I'm just anticipating FY25 budget, where I think by now we'll have microtransit fully going on and Card Connect. Yeah.
So if you add 4 people during the day up until 8.
Yeah, or to 10.
Yeah, that should catch all of them.
Yeah.
But you think you would need a full staff until
So because the weekend is where the problem is, most people call out sick. Yesterday I was there was supposed to be 5, only 2 working, because 3 of them, one sick, one didn't come in. So if we have more full staff, those that are even off, we can call them to help.
Do you rotate weekends or?
Yeah, they rotate weekends. Yeah. What they asking for?
Rotating weekends, you got people calling out?
Yeah, because what it is like, and we did a proposal. Maybe we'll present that to ministry and maybe to the board. They asking for, and most of our industry they do that. They work from home. So if you call that number, regardless of where I am, and I have a computer in front, I'll give you the same service. So this says if we can do them working from home, then it will entice even more part-timers to be.
Have you thought about hiring people for just weekend shifts?
Yes, that's the part-time. So we have a part-time schedule that's just, 20 hours, which is 10-hour shift, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. Okay. All right, this is my favorite slide, and I think I'm good with time. You all know about Cat Connect. I was a pioneer about it. I took it personal because my mom was 93 years before she passed. So I feel like it's a service to my mom's age group and for them to be able to just move from point A to point B. Again, kudos to our CFO who find this money and the program already said, Dr. Manny, this is it, do something. So we are so proud with the Cat Connect. When we started 3 weeks ago, I'll share this with everybody here. So far, we have 470 riders within 3 weeks. It's incredible. I predict by next month it will be so popular. Most people don't even know about it, but despite all the massive campaign we did. And I put this picture here particularly to explain that we took one seat out to accommodate a wheelchair. So that's why the ramp is all down. So it's also helping with people that would have depend on paratransit. All that is cut down, and next time I'll provide you guys with the data. What the impact of Cat Connect is also helping on the paratransit side, because it's on there, it's at your house, and it's every day. It runs Mondays. It goes to all the residents, and then I think it goes to Pula on Thursday, and service only Pula with all the 4 vehicles. So it's a very welcoming project. People are excited. Anytime the bus drivers see they pull up, they get on the bus and they got picked up. Say thank you, Cat, thank you. So this is public transit. It's a service that we are not in for profit. It's not how many profit we make, but we're being funded and because of how many people can we service. So this is a tailor-made pilot program, and it's so welcome that I hope that it will stay permanently. And that's all I have here for my Cat Connect. The good news is that we have 470 riders within 3 weeks. It's a good thing. Yeah. Any questions for me? Dr. Clinton, one more question for me? I could take one more. No, we're good? Okay. All right, that will conclude my presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next unit report is from Planning and Infrastructure Development with our Chief of Planning, Mary Moskowitz.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Board, and my staff, fellow staff, and the people watching at home. Okay, I said I could use the clicker. That might help. You got it? There it is. You got to wait for the green button to come on. Okay, thank you. Okay, so just some general planning updates. For infrastructure development, we are in the middle of our bus stop inventory. Our consultant has inventoried over 1,200 bus stops. When they started the project, we gave them a list of 1,100 stops, so they found 100 other stops that weren't on our list. And I had the pleasure of actually going out with our consultant and doing some of the inventory as well. And it's not just going out there mapping something, they're getting a lot of data on it, they're measuring the slopes, they're taking a look at all the information, you know, what type of shelter is there, what type of amenities are there, does it have a trash can, does the trash can have a lid on it, does it need some paint? So this isn't just a you know, mapping exercises, this is a complete detailed inventory of all of those stops. So they're working on the QA/QC right now and hope to have that final report available in the spring of this year. And what we're gonna do after we get all that information, then is use that to help prioritize and see what projects we're hoping to do. We're trying to budget for about 50 stops a year to see where those first stops are going to be needed to make those improvements too.
When would that decision be made, when we actually start? What's the projected date to start?
The projected date to start the improvements would be in the next budget year. Our first step is to get this project completed.
Get the what?
The first step is to get this inventory completed. And I think Dr. Robinson had asked about the Fuse Fellowship, and as the CEO mentioned, we are doing the recruitment right now and hope to have those interviews in March, and they will begin placement here in CAT in April for that project. Some grants that are coming up, some things that we're working on. The 5310 grant, that is the formula funding for the seniors and people with disabilities. It is actually administered through the Department of Health, so even though it's formula funding, in our region is guaranteed a certain amount of money, we have to apply to the Department of Health to receive those funds. So that application, I hope to bring that to the board next month for review and approval. There has to be an application and resolution associated with that. Another grant opportunity that was identified in our zero emission bus plan that you all approved this fall was to apply for the 5339C, which is the low or no emission buses. So staff is evaluating this. This is a competitive grant, so that means they just made the announcement earlier this month, and the deadline is April 25th. So we're right now reviewing that to see if that's something that we want to move forward with to apply. It is consistent with that zero emission bus plan that we did approve though.
It also requires, that's capital.
Correct.
80-20 match.
Correct.
And we would have to identify the 20% match needed to go after those 80% funds. And again, I'll reiterate, that's probably the single most challenging thing that we have right now is the lack of local match funds.
Why is that?
All of our, because what we get, so we get spliced, okay, and the SPLOST is already fully committed to projects and has been, because remember, we originally requested 20 million. The county gave us 10, and remember when we ran into the issue with the first two ferries, we had to come out of our 10 million with that to go ahead and proceed with those. We're still working with the county on a possibility for there to be some additional SPLOST funds that come to us based upon how collections are coming in very healthy, but we don't have that firm yet. In addition to that, the county gives us funds that are towards paratransit, although we're starting to try to really expand that thought process around this is about on-demand services, and rather than having the city who is sort of committed to the DOT shuttle and the county's committed to paratransit, we're starting to say, let's think of us as a budget, as a CAT, not services, but CAT, a system, and receive, funding commitments that way. But the things that are local funds for us, which are spliced, the transit tax district funding, and Ms. Cutter, help me out, some of the city funding that we get, agency funding, the funding that we get from partners.
SAMI funding?
SAMI funding and like this year, we got a one-off, but the $1.5 million, remember, that we got from the Savannah Convention Center, local funds again, state funds. And we have been able to be kind of creative, and like these funds that we now get from the state through the Georgia Transit Trust Fund, because they're state funds, we can leverage those towards federal dollars. So we can always turn those into more dollars as well by leveraging them. But local funds, the fact that they're just, it's not enough to meet all the demands that we have right now, and we've got to just, really work hard to earn the confidence and trust and present good plans. That's why the master transit plan that this board adopted is so important. That's like putting forward your business plan of what you're going to do, so people feel confident that if they're committing to helping fund these things, then they're going to see those things, and they're going to see them on time and on budget and so forth. But
Other than the city and county, what other partners do we have that we would go to for the 20% match?
could be a local government, like a if this was something that was in one of the jurisdictions, like a Port Wentworth even. If Port Wentworth decided they wanted something specific and they wanted to kick in additional funding, they could do that. But the city and the county, our city of Savannah and the county are our primary partners. Some of the other cities have offered in funding too, either through general fund or through tax district funding. Then we have the other tax district fund collections that Ms. Cutter reports out on to you every month. And then we have, like I said, these sort of some state funds that we can leverage federal funds with. And we also have these sort of one-offs of maybe it's, as Director Edminster just mentioned, maybe it's SAMI, maybe it's something specific from the convention center or whatever that might help us out. But we're just very limited in the kinds, like I said, right now, we've got $8 million in unaccessed new money that was made available through the bipartisan infrastructure law that we can't access because we need 1.6 million to match it. And that's money that if we, Ms. Cutter and I talk about this a lot, that's money that if we could access it today, the first thing we would do is put it towards more new buses and more new paratransit vehicles, because we let, maybe not so much paratransit now because we've actually done a pretty good job on that, but we let the deferred maintenance, just like we did with our ferries, catch up, and we haven't been replacing vehicles as quickly as we need to.
So, yeah, I was just wondering, there are no other wells to go to?
No, ma'am. Local funds are local funds. They're the hardest ones you earn.
So with that, I'll move on. I'm going to take us back in time a little bit here for some ridership information. As you all are aware, we do the service changes every approximately 4 months. So our last service change was in November. And just to reiterate, just to remind you what some of those changes were, we increased this frequency on Route 25. We modified the Route 17, so we have that consistent endpoint at Walmart. And then we restored Route 11, which services the hospital's routes. That service started mid-November, so it's had a little bit of time to kind of boil up and see where it's going. So I've got the next slide here. Dr. Manny reported on kind of general ridership. This is the ridership by route, and I've compared it to the January of last year's route. So you can see if the numbers are in red, that's an increase in the percentage. The numbers that are the numbers that are in red are a decrease. The number in green are an increase. And if you look just overall year over year, we see that there has been about a 7% increase in ridership since last January. We've also seen an increase in the number of hours that a bus runs, which we expected. We've added more service. There's been a slight decrease in the passengers per hour. That's a measure of the efficiency of your route. Some of those changes were intentional, though. We went ahead and in order to avoid things like the split shifts and to allow the drivers to have a more consistent schedule, the operators, we expanded service on routes that we might not have as much ridership. So we are increasing the amount of service, we are increasing ridership, and we are trying to become more efficient as well. As a reminder, if you look at our routes 25 and 17, they are in numeric order here, you do see some slight increases. Route 17, the Silk Hope, a pretty significant increase. Route 25, not as much as we had expected. One of the things that we're doing this service change is we increased the headway on the Sunday service as well. So now we're having half-hour service on Sunday as well. Hopefully that will draw some more ridership to that route. Obviously, Route 11, you can see we've have ridership on. Some other things that I'd like to point out here on Route 4, that is a change that we're looking at. You see there's a decrease in ridership from last year. We've had some feedback from both our operators and passengers about that route, and so as part of this March service change that is coming, we have made some changes to that route, specifically having consistency with the endpoint, and then allowing for two-way service on Sally Mood, which serves some of those public services, the health department, some community buildings there. And then if you go down, I think we mentioned a little bit about routes, the 27, 28, they both serve on that Waters Avenue corridor. That is one of our, what we call high frequency corridors, and one of the goals of the Transit Master Plan is to increase the frequency on those high ridership corridors to 30-minute headways, and that is something that we're looking at doing when we do that July service change. So that's just kind of looking at the past, some of the improvements that we made, and then looking into the future, what we're looking at as far as service planning.
Let me ask you one question. On that list, is there any route that has more than one bus, and you just combine the total?
A lot of our routes have multiple. Route 14 has 5 buses that run on it.
So that total.
That is a total ridership for the whole entire route, yes.
Okay.
One other thing I'd mention too is on the Waters and Abercorn routes, the city advised us last week that they're expecting that transit signal prioritization project to go live in April. We're still waiting on the equipment to come to be installed on our buses, but that should be here soon, and that'll be another boost to those two already very productive high-capacity corridors.
So that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
I thought it was nice to hear that you were expecting more ridership on the MLK route, and then you didn't see that. And to me, that just shows that you guys, you're looking, you're making expectations, you're creating hypotheses, you're trying something out, and then you're coming, and then you make changes again. And I think that's the best way to sort of, well, it's one way, and it's a very good way to sort of create an optimized system is to iterate. As long as we're communicating with our drivers and the riding public at large, that's really cool to see. It's sort of like, this worked, this didn't, cool. What did we learn? Let's try something else. So kudos.
Yeah, but Route 25, we increased on Monday through Saturday to 30-minute headways, and again, we were hoping to see a little bit more increase in ridership. We saw some, but not as much as we wanted. So now in March, we are increasing the Sunday. We're adding a second bus, so there'll be 30-minute headways there as well.
Is that the bus that goes to Westlake?
Yeah. I'm shaking, yes. Sometimes I know the numbers, I don't always know the location.
No, I was just thinking because that is a apartment area and low income and.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mary. Next up is our financial services update with our Chief Financial Officer, Cutter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be presenting the financial services status report for this board meeting. The first slide gives an update on our fiscal year 25 budget process. It's going very well. We've had the departmental budget trainings, introducing and bringing them up to date with the budget module in Munis. The budget requests were due to finance on February 9th, and to my knowledge, 95% of the budgets are in. Some requires more time because of other things going on. but we will open up the module for them to complete that entry. The department meetings are scheduled for March 5th, March 4th through 8th. And this is where we come around the table and the chiefs and department managers, when things don't make quite sense, this is their opportunity to explain it to us, wherein we can make sure all of the resources are needed are in the original budget. And then the paratransit budget request, it did get to the county. They thanked us for that. And most importantly, the board workshop scheduled for April 13, 2024. This process is going to be really good because if there's a significant gap between revenues and expenses, the board will have an opportunity to guide us in terms of what is priority. So if we have to make budget cuts, we know what the priorities are and we would make those cuts in accordance with the priorities as set by the board. Next slide. This is an overview of the account balances as of January 31st. Our operating account, 12.1 million. Our grant account, 5.2 million. And our investment account, 8.3 million. Our revenue by category is listed on the following chart. For the month of January, the revenue receipts total $1.6 million. Our fair revenue for the month of January, as you can see, fixed route was $108,619 collected, and our paratransit revenue was $9,132. And this chart just gives you a comparison from the beginning of the fiscal year to year to date. Our investment earnings for the month total $37,932, leaving us a balance at the end of January of $8.3 million in the investment account. This next graph just graphically displays our transit tax revenue. By month, the chart below gives you the exact amount, and the Georgia One Fund monthly interest is presented in the table on my right. Any questions so far? Okay, I'll go on. Our transit tax revenues for the month of January is presented by category, totaling $261,409. These are actual receipts for the month of December. Collections for December, rather. Our revenue by category is presented here. Our paratransit revenue that we received from Chatham County was the largest source for the month, followed by our transit tax revenue at 23%. At the beginning of the fiscal year, we project out the revenue for the fiscal year, and revenue has been coming in quite well. For the month of January, it came in at 12. The ending cash balance at the end of the month was $12.1 million. That's that sits in the operating account. We anticipate the account balances going down for the month of February, going down until we get to June, the end of the fiscal year, and we expect it to climb back up till about $10.4 million. And this is all contingent, of course, upon no unbudgeted events, no emergency purchases, that kind of thing. At the end of the fiscal year, as a part of the FY '25 budget, if there are projected savings, we will bring it to the board to say, for approval, just how those savings will be allocated. Our expenses by division total $2.1 million. It was 523,000 more than the revenue for the month. The overall variance, of course, is a positive of $4.9 million. Our expenses by category follows the norm, where salaries and benefits takes up most of the expenses. Salaries at 40%, benefits at 23%. Keeping the board informed of grant activities. The drawdowns are presented up top. Calling your attention to the SPLOS reimbursement for the month of $202,508. The other draws were from the FTA. The bottom portion of the chart, it outlines all of the grant expenditures coming out of the grant account. Our most important asset, our human resources, with a focus on, of course, recruiting qualified applicants, retaining those qualified applicants through strategies of employee health and wellness, through competitive wages, work-family balance, and of course, company benefits. Our recruitment stats for the month, I want to call your attention to the applications, the not qualified received for Technician B. That should be 0 instead of the 9 that was left over, the 90. The 9 was left over from last month, so that has been updated. For the month, we received 82 applications. Of those 82, 33 applications were deemed not qualified. We made 10 offers and we had 11 new hires. The vacancies at the end of the month total 60. This chart gives you an outline where the vacancies are, and we are recruiting for most of them. Some of them we are not for various different reasons. Some of our retention strategies include, within the '24 budget, significant dollars for staff training and development, leadership training and development, and team building. We are encouraging the department managers to please take advantage of this allocation to get employees trained, prepared for leadership, and strengthening the CAT team. Some of the CAT Cares initiatives are our Fresh Fruit Friday, in which we replenish the break room with fresh fruits, all break rooms in the building, bringing in training such as estate planning, financial literacy. We conducted a health fair in January, lunch and learn sessions. We even have employee fund days and retirement plan investment. Our wellness program has made major strides in this fiscal year. We talked about the Fresh Fruit Fridays. That's every Friday. Our lunch and learn session for the month of January, 10 strategies for time management. We have a wellness calendar with wellness tips every month that CAT has printed, and they're posted throughout the building. And then the mobile mammogram was here on January 22nd and 15 employees took advantage of that free service. The wellness fair was held on January 26th. We had 84 participants. The vendors included United Healthcare, that's our health insurance provider, Healthy Savannah, United Way, Mission Square, that's the manager of our 401 plan, and then, of course, St. Joseph Candler Hospital. That pretty much concludes my report for the month. Are there any questions for me? If not, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
All right. Now I'd like to ask Chief Administrative Officer Sanders to come forward, and I believe he also has two key managers with him today that'll be giving updates that had been requested by the board specifically on safety and on IT. Thank you.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Massimo, and good afternoon to you all, the directors and staff, and those who are listening in the listening audience. I'm going to present on administrative services, and as Mr. Massimo mentioned, I have two of my team members here today who are going to talk about some specific things that you all have inquired about, either through email or through talking with Mr. Massimo. And so I'm going to begin with the first slide on training department updates. Training remains a very integral part of what we do. It's been alluded to in comments previously made, but I will start by mentioning some retraining information that's linked to operations. Accidents occur, as we know, and what I'm reporting for January is some information on preventable accidents. There were 3 that were related to paratransit and 1 that was related to fixed route. And of course, every time an accident of this type, these types occur, it's automatic for retraining to occur. And that's hosted by our training department. Plan trainings. Training is, again, it's a big focus of what we're doing right now. And in collaboration with Dr. Manny and his staff, we have ongoing meetings where we're talking about enhancing and making training better, whether it's for fixed route or paratransit or what have you. And these are 2 of the trainings that we've been working with him on. We're in talks right now to develop a curriculum for customer service training geared towards the ITC staff. And he has requested that we do one for the ferry boat staff, which our training department is currently developing the curriculum. We'll have more information on these 2 trainings, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that customer service training is important agency-wide, so we're going to be looking at that as well. So wanted to mention that as a caveat as well.
Gerald, really quickly, I wanted to mention specifically on the marine and ferry boat staff in our regular coordination with SAMI, and this would, as I understand it, Dr. Robinson, would be a complimentary thing that we would be able to be included in. Customer service training that's offered right now through that SAMI members offer, either as a part of tours or as a, in those that are in that tourism industry, but also with Visit Savannah and with the Tourism Leadership Council. We're working with them to identify, can we join their customer service training for our marine services staff to help build, the partnership there, but also build that sort of common customer service platform.
And under other staff training and policy revisions, which I'll mention here, one, we have non-union oriented training, which is what I put this first one under, but we are trying to do training that is comprehensive enough where it addresses the concerns, if you will, of the entire CAT team. So this is the business writing professional emails was one that was done to February 20, and also this one is a favorite of Dr. Manny's and it's becoming a favorite of mine, and it has to do with the fixed route CDL program, which he brought to us some time back. Very popular program. It's been very successful. The syllabus is under it's being revised, and the training, just so you know, that's being done comes from It's a book called TAPCO, and don't ask me what the acronyms mean today. Dr. Manny probably knows a little better. But it is, that document is like an industry standard for how training is conducted, generally for the length of 6 weeks. We have expanded that to 8-week program. We do things that go beyond the industry standard, and I think he's to be commended for that, and we're certainly working very close with him to make sure that that training manual is not just, in somebody's head, and it's partly written. What we're doing is updating and making sure the whole 8 weeks are written down so that if he's not here, I'm not here 5 years from now, there's some standardization that can be brought into the process, and that also there will be insurance of training consistency, which I think is important as well. So very happy to be collaborating with him in that regard. Moving right along to, as I mentioned, and I think Mr. Massimo mentioned earlier, I have some department teammates. I think there was some questions. Dr. Gertrude, maybe you had one about the ITC security. So I have Mark, who is our, yes, I have an IT concerns as well in terms of the IT plan. Getting ahead of myself. Anyway, what I'd like to do is take a moment and let Mark Blackhill, who's the manager of IT innovation, come up and speak about the overall plan. If there's some questions, he certainly can address. Good afternoon, Chairman, Director, peers, and the public at large. You each received a handout today that did not make it into the presentation of kind of where we were as a business when I got here and where we're moving to today. Currently, our desk side environment, computers, et cetera, have been 70% upgraded at this point from when I got here, everything out of warranty, et cetera. So we're moving that portion forward. Our plan for this year will be network-based. The foundation of our business is struggling, and we're going to work toward building that back in the budgeting process this year. It'll be a big ask, $65,000 to upgrade our 2 corporate offices, but that will allow us to move forward in new phones, et cetera. We're also upgrading the Wi-Fi in the yard here so that our buses can better communicate. That'll allow them to offload their clever data at the end of the day a little bit quicker and get us to a point where we're allowing that portion of our business to just move forward. Printers, copiers, et cetera, all end of life needing updating. A big piece for us going forward will be phones that if anyone on our board has expertise in that, we will be replacing our phones here, whether it be with a SaaS solution or physical solution. We're also going to need help with call center and the way Dr. Manny wants to route calls and be able to skill people in the right ways. Those things all cost money when we put that system in, which will be a big talking point moving forward. Our network communication is slow in some facets, so we'll be upgrading those. The vast majority of those upgrades will be cost savings, not cost increases. Services, the wrong use statement companies, they sometimes don't give you the best pricing. We're in that house right now, and we're working to migrate kind of away from AT&T and high pricing to other vendors with better pricing, better speeds. Then there's a breakdown of all of our systems, whether it be fixed route, paratransit, and which pieces of software, et cetera, they use on a day-to-day basis. Paratransit was historically a sore spot. When I got here, RouteMatch didn't consistently run well day in, day out. We have leveled that environment out so that we're able to stay online and get our customer service better. Dr. Manny has staffed up, and as he said, we target a 0 every day. And as I walk out at the end of the day, I stop and see the schedulers and see where we're at, just for my own peace of mind to keep that system running so that we can get 0 every day.
Dr. Bailey's fixture outside of the house. Our total budget ask includes some services that are budgeted for today. That number looks to be about $2.1 million. So as a business, to continue to move us forward, whether it be a software program, hardware, or anything, that number right now looks to be about $2.1 million.
You know, with the, I want to ask you about the, technology, the Clever device.
Yes.
Is that a cost savings to us in any way, or can we measure that?
Clever, I don't know that will ever be a cost savings to us. We're looking to kind of break down silos that have historically been in this business. So we use Trapeze for planning, scheduling, operations. Clever has a module for that. So anytime we can break down that silo and bring another thing in to communicate one system systematically, it's gonna make us better. We're gonna have better, consistent data across the board.
So in your ask for, does it include the Clever? Because I know you said each time we may have to add more modules based on the Clever. And what I just heard you say too, when we add Clever, we can kind of do it with some of the other stuff that we already have in place. So it's not in addition to.
I don't think it's a zero-sum game, but we're bettering ourselves, and you're correct, though, that we're not wholesale taking on new costs, because some of what we're giving away reduces it in some measure, but it's not a one-for-one kind of a thing, because you're getting a much better product.
We're really gonna gain new technology. A lot of how they have to do things within Trapeze, et cetera, is a manual process more than a drag and drop type process that we're using today. That new product that we're talking about, Mayor for Clever, is more of a drag and drop process. And when you do that, if you make a change that affects multiple routes, it tells you, and then you okay that change, and then it puts that change in systematically across 3 routes, say, instead of you going manually up 3 routes. That one process will take care of that.
So I'm thinking what I'm pretty much hearing him say is what we kind of talked about when you first introduced Clever to us, you know, about having to add different modules at a time. But $2 million sounds like a lot of money.
It is.
That's not just Clever. That's across the board things. That's the hardware money I've asked for. That is some money for Clever devices. We know that.
I'm just thinking, if Clever's giving us those type of improvement.
Yes, ma'am.
It's okay to invest in it, you know, that's what I'm saying, but, you know, and that sounds like it's gonna be the bulk of the ask for. It sounds like it to me, so.
That's correct.
There are at least 3 Clever modules that have been put forward as part of the budgeting process that we talked about. But that ask is 2.1, and that'll get determined through the budgeting process, what can actually be funded.
Yeah, and I also think, I personally think it's important for the board to see that we're doing this, and we're able to do, you know, this is what it's gonna do, this is what it's gonna improve. If we start asking for, we're gonna wanna know, what you need that much money for?
Yes, ma'am. And that's what it's about, is being able to get into a system that we can cleanly mine that data to give you what you're asking for in the time you're asking for, right? That's why we're putting Clever Matrix in today for real-time reporting. As we add these additional things, we'll be able to give you what you want in the manner that you want to see it, and then give you one.
Mark, I have a question. Upgrading the Wi-Fi in the yard, would this assist with the fixed route buses? Because we do get a lot of complaints about certain buses not having Wi-Fi. That would help.
That'll only help in the yard. Those are, what you're talking about is Wi-Fi on the bus while you're driving. We would need to know those so that they can be looked at. It's something that's happening on that system, in the electronics cabinet, in that specific bus.
But Danya, if you'd be sure to provide us that information, President Swinton, we'll follow through with it and make sure that we're targeting those as a part of our overall assessment of technology. Absolutely. Because I'm going to tell you, that is critical. The fact that our buses and our facilities need to be Wi-Fi accessible, it's an important part of how we operate, but it's also an important part of the customer experience that leads to ridership.
And that was a struggle for us a few months back, where the mass majority of our buses weren't doing that.
Absolutely.
And we got that back online working with Clever. So the mass majority of our buses, I believe, are working correctly.
Any other questions?
This is a big piece, but such an important piece of what we're doing and important for the future of how we operate and serve the public. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
And I think, it's kind of based on that, April, board retreat for finance, I think, and hearing all this now make for good conversation in that.
Okay. Next item is safety and security, and I'm going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in two parts. There were some questions that I remember coming up, and so Mr. Kennedy was not here during our subcommittee meeting, but he is here today. I'm going to ask him to come up, and he can talk about some specifics as it relates to the ITC, and then I'll do the other part of the safety and security presentation.
Ladies, please come through.
I can start by giving the routine updates if we want to go to the next slide. Is that? So I know Dr. Manny had gone over the overall fixed route preventable KPIs. We do have the collisions, both preventable and non-preventable, which are broken down on the screen there. We did have, for fixed route, 4 preventable collisions, 2 fixed object, 2 side swipes. The side swipes were very minor. Paratransit, 2 fixed object collisions, and then maintenance, 1 fixed object collision on the yard. And we can go to the next slide. I did want to kind of highlight some of the security performance that we have had at the transit center. Over the past 6 months, we have had 20 documented enforceable bans, which have been issued for problematic individuals. I have found that since moving to an in-house security team, our ability to really document and enforce these bans for individuals that are continuously problematic on our services has been greatly increased.
So there are 20 people that no longer can catch a cab.
Correct. Yep. And this is not a measure that we take lightly. This is a measure that we take when this person has really repeatedly shown us, either through a pattern of conduct or through very severe conduct that person cannot be in compliance with our policies. And then of the 3 individuals who harassed our operators, all 3 were identified, arrested, and prosecuted based on CAT security information. I believe that is all the routine updates. So I'm here to kind of field some questions that I know we've had on security at the ITC, as well as the viewing stations and the closing hours. So to recap what I think we may have gone over in the emails, the closing hours for the ITC, we open at 7 a.m. each day and close at 8 p.m. in line with the ticket window hours. However, we do leave the building open longer if there is, a case of extreme cold, or if there is weather of some kind where people need to take shelter after hours, at least until 10 p.m. when CAT services stop. And the balance between letting people take shelter in the building versus making sure that people are safe, because when we keep the building open, that does create increased potential for loitering. And we did have an incident a little bit earlier last year where we did have someone who had been staying in the building, was not a passenger, who was brandishing a weapon. So we want to try and avoid situations like that by reducing the kind of incentive to come in there and just stay in there.
Sam, you may also mention too, we've also had instances where the cleaning personnel who do come in, that there may have been individuals who had taken seclusion in the restrooms. Yes. That were a problem. I know that Mr. Reed has personally reached out to me before about when we were still trying to work through a system that wasn't working very well with Greyhound, about when their operating hours extended beyond hours that they were responsible for securing the building, but people were still getting in at night. And I know there were several times that Mr. Reed alerted me to the fact that he was across the street or would be somewhere near the ITC, and he could see people being able to come and go. So that's when we put in a much more, a stronger policy about the securing the building in the evening. But we've also tried to be human and work with Greyhound along the way about how we can both, take care of our passengers and so forth. But we've, in every case, taken a bottom line that we want to do everything we can, but our first and foremost priority is to making sure that people are safe. And we've got to keep that interior space safe. And so we've got to be able to staff appropriately to do that. So I know you're going to talk a little bit about that as well.
Right, yeah, and I think, and to briefly touch on the viewing stations as well, we are waiting on new security workstations at the transit center, which is kind of tied to the transit center upgrades that we saw earlier today. So we're kind of working with that in terms of what exactly those upgrades will look like and where those are going to be located. With the current plan that's on the table, I think we're tentatively thinking we're going to locate that security office, like we mentioned, in the old boardroom, which would have the space to accommodate the security team. But again, we may need to modify that depending on what the remodel looks like. And then I think a lot of these problems, including with closing times and having to balance all of that, there was a time when the ITC was open 24/7. When we transitioned to in-house, we didn't immediately have the staffing that we would need in order to maintain that model. So this is a very temporary solution where we're trying to find the best balance. But the proposal that I've submitted for fiscal year 25 will address a lot of these. There's money for viewing stations. There's money for increased staffing, which will allow us to return to that 24/7 safely with full security staff, as well as covering a lot of other general security improvements. I think when we moved from contract staff to in-house staff, we saw definitely a great increase in the ability of security personnel to really communicate with the other areas of our organization, which has led to some increased safety yields. I think that when we made that transition, we didn't have really the benefit of being able to fully talk with Ms. Cutter and finance and work that into the budget, but we've had definitely, we've received a wealth of practical instruction from the experience over the past year, and so the budget proposal for next year, I think a lot of those concerns will be addressed.
Sam, two things also to please mention. One is our partnership with Savannah PD and the stopovers that they're doing now, much more routinely than when we first started that partnership. And then the second is the notion, though, of continuing at least to have available to us on-call temporary security services, just so when there are larger events or there's some particular occurrence that happens that we just need to call in quickly, extra depth and capacity, we would have the ability to do that even as you're still building out the team. It's just we only would use them when we would need them kind of thing.
Right.
You'd mentioned both of those.
Yeah, so we are very proud of the ability of the in-house staff to kind of forge and maintain lasting partnerships with our partner community agencies. That includes the Savannah Police Department as well as the Chatham-Savannah Authority for the Homeless. And then our partnership with Savannah PD, just in order to kind of increase law enforcement visibility at our sites, including this main office as well as the transit center. We've provided 20 of our employee badge access cards to Savannah PD so that their officers can sign those out and stop over at our facilities while they're on their shift to use the restroom, maybe do some paperwork there, grab a cup of coffee. And then, while they're stopping there, the presence of that law enforcement vehicle outside is a strong deterrent to any kind of criminal activity in the area. And then as far as contract security services, again, as staffing increases, we expect not to utilize that option often, but there may be situations, for example, we have St. Patrick's Day coming up, where we will have increased security staffing needs. And so to have that option where we have a set private agency, where we have a service agreement or a contract to get those additional personnel at short notice, whether that's because we're facing staffing challenges or again because of these large events where we have an increased need for security presence.
I guess I've got two questions for you.
Yeah.
One is, what are the major challenges you face hiring full-time people? You know, we saw where there's part-time positions and full-time positions. What are the challenges? I don't know whether it's you or human resources.
Yeah, that would be a human resources question. I don't have a window necessarily into what the recruitment process looks like or how we can necessarily improve that. I know we do approve a substantial number of candidates, but well, yeah, I can't necessarily speak on what exactly those challenges are. I'm more aware of what our challenges are with retention, and I think I can speak on that to a certain degree, but recruitment would definitely be an HR question.
So you're not involved in recruiting at all? You don't get to
so
see
the-
them, you don't see the applications, you don't see none of that?
So the part of the process that I look at, I do receive the applications from HR. My security supervisor and I will perform the staff interview for the applicant. At that point, we either approve the candidate and send them back to HR, or we don't. The majority of the interviews do result in the candidate being approved for hire. So we do find that the majority of the applicants who are found to be qualified by HR and sent to us do perform well on the interview process. But I wouldn't be able to offer too much insight into what happens after that. I know we haven't had too many hires that make it through after the approval. What I have heard is that sometimes they just find other jobs and opportunities while they're waiting for the application process to complete. But again, HR could offer more perspective on that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
How long is the application process that if you interview them and choose them, and once you hire them, it's so long that they find another job and you can't hire?
Let's direct that question to Ms. Cutter.
I'll address that. The process is not bang, 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 bang. One thing, HR does the screening of the applications to make sure that the applicants are qualified via whether it's some security experience. If that's good, if they meet the qualifications as identified in the application, the applications are sent to Mr. Kennedy to set up interviews. Interviews don't necessarily happen immediately. Once that process is completed, he makes his selection, and it's totally up to the department manager who he wants to process. Now, we get candidates once they go through the process, whether it's a drug screen failure, the employment history done, check out, former employers that are listed, they can't get in touch with them, and all of this is through D&D. They can't get in touch with them, they leave messages, they won't call back. So that particular applicant cannot be processed because it is not clear the pre-screening process.
But he's talking about people he's already interviewed, so they've cleared the pre-screening process.
Well, there's still a substantial element of that process that remains after the interview.
The screening as to whether or not what the applicant has placed on the application is valid, whether or not they can pass the drug test, criminal background, and all of that. That comes after he says, yes, I want to hire this candidate.
So if they don't verify the application, the information on the application to get that person an interview, that's only done after the interview?
That's right.
How come that's not a part of the pre-screening? Because
Well,
should all that stuff be verified?
they pre-screen based upon what the applicant says.
Right, so.
And they send, if the application itself says, yes, I am qualified, it goes to the manager to interview. If the manager says, yes, I like this particular application, please proceed. That's when the recruiter enters the information backgrounders check, they do the, employment history, those types of screens.
Right, but that stuff's less than a week.
No, not all the time, because some of them could be out of state, which takes longer. There could not be a response, there could be a problem with the drug test, they have to be retested. It's a lot of things that may come up in order to clear them. Once they are cleared, the department managers are notified, and they are scheduled for new employee orientation. Some take
What's the
longer
percentage
than
that make
others.
it through?
I don't have those numbers, but I can research that and get it back to you. One of the, issues where Mr. Kennedy addressed this is that most people wanted full-time work. And the full-time positions were filled, the part-time positions were not. And he, reclassified 4 part-times to 2 full-times. So now you'll have more full-time and only 2 part-times left.
Yes, we reclassified 6 of the 7 part-time positions to 3, so now we're looking for 10 full-time, 1 part-time. I will say that with the difficulty of finding part-time people who can fit into that schedule, in the next fiscal year, we plan to eliminate part-time positions.
Any from the savings on behalf of HR, we have more people in. It's just that the retention part is what we present. It's we brought, some if you have those numbers, how many came in and how many left and working now?
Some employees it's just not a good fit, and we have to start over again. But HR has been encouraged, not only with safety, but with all managers to work closely with them to make sure these interviews are scheduled, and that once the manager says, yes, I want this employee, unless something comes up in that screening process, then it should move. And remember, the scheduling and the interviews is up to the manager, and the decision is the manager's choice, only unless they do not pass the pre and post screenings.
So what's the average time the post-screening takes? Just an average?
I would say for
For
security,
the in-state person.
if everyone, starting with the department manager, with the interview, I would say 2 weeks, 2, 3 weeks. Get those interviews in, say you want them, run them through B&B, particularly if they're local, that really shouldn't take.
Ms. Cutter, have we had any, though, that have actually, I was just reflecting on that a little bit and some of the issues that we've had. I'm not sure that we've been able to run any quite that quick yet, have we?
Yes, we have.
Have we?
Once it's turned over, once the manager notifies HR that they want to hire, now, there have been some stumbling blocks.
Yeah.
Because the employee may not have had the experience that the job description calls for.
Right.
Or there may be a questionable manner, whether it's being able to verify the contents of the application. But if everything is smoothly, and sometimes the applicant doesn't turn in information to HR timely, and that slows it up.
Yeah.
So the recruiter has to reach out and stay on them. I need your driver's license, your social security card, because we go through E-Verify.
Yeah.
And without that information, we cannot move.
Yeah, no,
If they're delayed with that, that slows it.
Yeah, I didn't think it was necessarily HR. I was just saying, I do believe that exactly what Ms. Cutter just described, I can recall on my own in conversations with all of these folks where people just hadn't come back and turned in things they needed to turn in or that were requested of them, and the process stretches out longer because of a whole variety of things. So that's why I think the 2 to 3 weeks is ambitious, because the truth of the matter is a lot of times people just don't get their stuff in. And
And that's not all the time.
No.
Those are just those cases where a recruitment is delayed. If everybody does everything that they need to do in order to come on board, we can get them in and on the job. No longer than, if they're in state, that's
first,
right.
And the recruiter should be verifying that they fit the criteria prior to
going to the
manager for an interview.
Absolutely.
So there should be some pre-qualifying done
That's correct.
prior to them, because
That is correct.
what we don't want to do is make it difficult for managers to hire people, because it's already difficult for us to retain people. So we want to be able to get them in.
And I think that's why the recruitment stats are where they are, is because HR is doing a better job with getting people in here to apply for the positions that CAT has. And I'm not gonna say it's a flawless process,
Right.
but it's ongoing and continuous improvement.
Right.
HR staff, just like any other staff, has to be properly supervised, given proper expectations. And I tell the staff, you serve the managers of Chatham Area Transit.
Right.
So our customer service, as we service them,
It is
has to
customer
be,
service.
that's exactly what it is. It has to be up to par. And that's why some people sometimes don't even make it in HR.
Right. I wouldn't want a manager to lose repeated people because the process was so long, especially if these are people born and raised in Georgia and their
correct.
history is here in Georgia. Because that should be able to
It
be
should be
processed
smoothly
smoother.
and processed unless
Right.
it's a hiccup, you know,
Right.
with the employment verifications or the drug screening, that kind of thing.
Right.
But they are
He shouldn't lose
encouraged.
too many people.
That's correct. And some people just don't qualify. And the stats that are reported, it will identify the number of applicants that we received, and then the number that were deemed not qualified.
Right.
So
I
that
saw
helps you
that.
all to,
So maybe
kind of.
we can figure, maybe in those stats next time, you can let us know of the qualified, how many are interviewed.
Okay.
And then from the interviewed, how many are hired.
Yes, the hirings are on the stat sheet.
Okay.
The offers are on the stat sheet.
Right.
The number of applications received
I saw
is
that.
on the stat sheet.
And the ones that
then-
were unqualified.
Yes, so really trying to give the board a good picture
Yeah.
of what's going on and holding staff accountable. We are customer service, we are gatekeepers.
In the heart of the organization. Y'all are the ones
That's-
who make sure
that's
everything
exactly
flows.
right.
You make sure that the employee is taken care of.
That's right.
Yes, so.
Confidentiality,
extremely
employees are
important.
taken, absolutely.
So that's, yeah.
Absolutely.
So, and all the managers should feel supported by
Yes.
HR.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if they're not, while I'm over this temporarily, please let me know.
Last thing I'd want to add as we close this up, and this goes back to the original, this was an area that Dr. Robinson had asked about specifically. One of the other things that has been particularly challenging for us at the ITC is our proximity to the shelter and our proximity to the Family Dollar there. There's just a lot of activity in that area. We've had overdoses down there and so forth. I mean, it's a little bit of a challenging environment there, and that's why the security of the building itself and entrance and exiting of the building is something that we have been keenly focused on, because we want to be sure that our everybody from our operators, our passengers, and our cleaning staff that comes in after hours all feel safe and protected and such. So, Sam, thank you for a very good report.
I have one more question. Do you have a hard time clearing out the building at night? Are you able to do that without calling in SPD
Yes, so currently, we are, I would say that the difficulty comes in when there isn't consistency. So right now, we are currently training a new security officer to work on that PM shift. That PM shift is currently not covered. So there may be some challenges in the coming weeks where we start enforcing something where it hasn't necessarily been. With closing times, though, those are pretty consistent. We keep up with those every day. Most of the people who are in the lobby are either Greyhound passengers, and they're generally very cooperative. And as for the other people who may be in there, they know the drill by now. So I would say the fact that we've been able to keep up with that consistently, we haven't been seeing any of the problems that we saw with that process earlier in 2023 when that was a new policy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I have, next slide. It's up, okay. This is my last slide, and I just wanted to make the board aware of a diversity, equity, and inclusion event, and it is a doing business with CAT event. The media department alluded to it a little bit earlier, but just real quick before I take my seat, the focus will be sharing CAT business opportunities with local businesses and entrepreneurs. One of the things we'll be doing is sharing with them some projected lines of business, at least 6 months out, that may be coming up. And then we intend to disseminate information about CAT's contracting groups, which include, and this is also mentioned in the diversity RFP as well, construction services, professional services, goods and services, and I think I did not include concessions on there. So those are 4 groups that we hope to provide information to the public about. And of course, the target group is minority and women-owned businesses. Our date when we're looking to do it is, of course, here in the spring of 2024. So the programming and workshops, speakers, panel, those sorts of things are still in the planning process now, but we hope to update you all as some of those things become, as time goes on. We'll bring more information to the board on that, and certainly extend an invite to each of you to come and participate. And if you have any suggestions between now and then, I'm certainly open to those as well.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. And we'll turn it back over to Chairman Cody.
Thank you. Thank you for those reports. So we'll be moving on to old new business. All right, first item.
It's tabled again
is
today, sir.
tabled. We need to take a motion, get a motion and second for that.
It's the
About the interior of the.
It's the renovation to the ITC. You tabled it again today, but I think that action's already been taken, right?
All right. We'll go to B, for the sample paint swatches for the exterior painting and cleaning contract awarded to Miller Painting. All right. Gotcha. And our draft policy, C. Our recommendation by Director Odell, potential litigation, personal complaints, policy development.
Yeah, I added that so everybody could review it and give us comments, suggestions, changes, but I wanted to open discussion.
Do you have any discussion on this matter? CEO, did you want to make any comments on it?
You can review it with the other ones that we're reviewing.
That's what I'm thinking too, yeah. Can we just
Review those at the same time. All right. It looks like that concludes our business for the day. At this time, I'd like to adjourn this meeting. The time is 3:11. See you all on the next board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All right.
That's it.
What you mean?